Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Oldham County Fiscal Court. I'm Judge Executive David Vogel. Happy to have you here with us today. I'd like to ask everyone who's able to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you happen to bring a cell phone with you today, we'd appreciate it if you turn it to off or vibrate during the course of the meeting. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Magistrate Likens. Magistrate Tice.
Here.
Magistrate Leslie.
Here.
Magistrate Greenwell.
Here.
Magistrate Hounds.
Here.
Magistrate Eldridge.
Here.
Magistrate Dye.
Here.
Magistrate Logsdon.
Here.
Judge Vogel.
Here. Having 8 of the 9 members of the Fiscal Court present, this meeting is now in session. Is there a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Is there anyone who would like to add anything to the agenda? Magistrate Greenwell.
Thank you, Judge. We'd like to add discussion about the road department backhoe, please.
All right, we'll have that. Anything else? I have one here. We'll put these down under other business. The backhoe, and then we have another one, an agreement with, environmental agreement with Red Wing Services. And I believe those are the two. The household hazardous, we'd already approved them.
I'm not adding it. The one.
All right. Well, all right, just those two. All right, hearing no others, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Before we get on to reading the minutes of our last meeting, looking ahead on our calendar, we normally meet on the first and third Tuesdays of each month. The first Tuesday in July is actually going to be the 4th of July. So our procedure for the last several years has been to try to move up our first meeting in July actually until the last week in June. That gives us a chance to pay the bills that we have accumulated and not have to delay a paying until the next meeting of the fiscal court. So I'd like to recommend at this point that we change our calendar to meet on the morning of June 29th at 10 a.m. in place of July 4th.
You need a motion?
Yes, sir.
Second.
Discussion? Magistrate Greenwell.
What time of the morning? You say morning, Judge?
10 a.m.
10, okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you. Oops, did you have
Just as a point of order, Judge, under personnel actions, we have personnel actions, and it says Parks and Rec, and I'm seeing that Ms. Schaaf has brought out a new sheet that includes a different office as well. Do we need to change the agenda for that, or just include it?
we can, that's a good idea. We can add that for personnel action, Park and Rec, and then I believe, did you bring someone for
Engineering.
engineering? Right.
Thank you.
Thank you for catching that. So we'll add that to the agenda with everyone's agreement. And we've taken our vote, so we'll meet on the 29th of June at 10 a.m. Now I'd like to ask our clerk, Sheila Fair, to please read the minutes from our last meeting.
May 2nd, 2017. The Oldham County Fiscal Court convened at a regular meeting at 2 p.m. with Judge Executive David Vogel, County Attorney John Carter, and the following magistrates in attendance: Brent Likens, Wayne Tice, Bob Leslie, Steve Greenwell, Chris Hounds, Kevin Eldridge, Bob Dye, and Michael Logsdon. Motion made by Magistrate Leslie and seconded by Magistrate Greenwell to approve the agenda as submitted, adding salt bid award, Railroad Avenue funding, and AOC purchase order. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Dye and seconded by Magistrate Leslie to approve the meeting minutes of April 18th. Motion carried unanimously. Kevin Nuss, Emergency Management Director, provided an overview of the cleanup efforts from the recent tornado and the current statewide burn ban. Sam McCown, Field Representative for Governor Bevin, introduced himself and asked fiscal court members to see him after the meeting with any concerns they would like brought to the governor's attention or DLG. Bid opening for the shingle work at the Senior Center. There were no bids submitted for the shingle work project at the Senior Center. Bid opening for the brick wall repair at the Courthouse Square. There were no bids submitted for the brick wall repair project at Courthouse Square. County Administration payables. Motion made by Magistrate Helms and seconded by Magistrate Leslie to approve the payables. Motion carried 8-1. Magistrate Greenwell voted no. Surplus property. Motion made by Magistrate Dye and seconded by Magistrate Greenwell to declare surplus the list of county property with the intent to sell at public auction. Motion carried unanimously. Community business. First reading, zoning map amendment, 10500 West Highway 42 in Goshen, Hermitage Farms. Senior Planner Amy Alvey presented for the first reading proposed ordinance number KOC 17920-374 relating to a change in the Oldham County zoning map rezoning a 7.96 acre tract located at 10500 West Highway 42 in Goshen from the existing AG1 agricultural and CO1 conservation zoning classifications to C1 commercial local business district zoning classification. The second reading will be May 16th. Contract agreements and resolutions. Memorandum of Agreement, Curry's Fork Watershed Grant. Motion made by Magistrate Eldridge and seconded by Magistrate Greenwell to authorize the Judge Executive to sign the Memorandum of Agreement relating to the Curry's Fork Watershed Grant. Motion carried 8-1. Magistrate Tice voted no. CMRS grant request for the logging recorder. Motion made by Magistrate Helms and seconded by Magistrate Leslie to authorize the Judge Executive to sign the CMRS grant request for new telephone and radio logging recorder equipment. Motion carried unanimously. Agreement with URS, final design phase, Spring Hill Trace Sidewalk Project. Motion made by Magistrate Dye and seconded by Magistrate Logsdon to authorize the Judge Executive to sign the agreement with URS relating to the final design phase for the Spring Hill Trace Sidewalk Project. Motion carried 8-1. Magistrate Linkins voted no. Amendment to agreement with KYTC, Apple Patch Park and Ride Project Extension. Motion made by Magistrate Dye and seconded by Magistrate Helms to authorize the Judge Executive to sign the agreement amendment with KYTC relating to the Apple Patch Park and Ride Project. Motion carried unanimously. Apple Patch CDBG grant document for residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan. Motion made by Magistrate Helms and seconded by Magistrate Tice to authorize the Judge Executive to sign the residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan relating to the Apple Patch CDBG grant as presented. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Helms and seconded by Magistrate Leslie to authorize the Judge Executive to sign the fair housing resolution relating to the Apple Patch grant. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Helms and seconded by Magistrate Tice to authorize the Judge Executive to sign the Title VI Statement of Assurances relating to the Apple Patch grant. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Leslie and seconded by Magistrate Helms to authorize the Judge Executive to sign the cost overrun resolution relating to the Apple Patch grant. Motion carried unanimously. Other business, road salt bid award. Motion made by Magistrate Greenwell, seconded by Magistrate Helms, to award the road salt bid to Morning Star for $79.35 per ton if they meet all contract requirements. If not, the project will be awarded to Detroit Salt for $81.49 per ton as bid. Motion carried unanimously. Railroad Avenue funding. Motion made by Magistrate Greenwell and seconded by Magistrate Helms to authorize the county to spend up to $2,500 towards new signage at Railroad Crossing and Crestwood. Motion carried unanimously. AOC Building Chiller Rental. Motion made by Magistrate Linkins and seconded by Magistrate Tice to authorize the Judge Executive to sign the purchase authorization form for rental of a temporary chilling system at the AOC Building. Motion carried unanimously. Request to use courthouse lawn. Motion made by Magistrate Leslie and seconded by Magistrate Eldridge to allow Oldham County Arts Association use of the courthouse lawn and adjacent parking lot June 2nd through the 4th, starting at 12 p.m. on the 2nd, for the annual Arts on the Green event. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Leslie and seconded by Magistrate Eldridge to allow Noteworthy Creative Group use of the courthouse lawn September 29th for the annual Dinner on Main Street event to benefit the Oldham County Educational Foundation. Motion carried unanimously. Personnel, Parks and Recreation. Motion made by Magistrate Logsdon and seconded by Magistrate Linkins to approve the attached list of 2017 Aquatic Center seasonal staff effective May 8th, 2017. Motion carried unanimously. Board appointments. Assessment Appeals Board. Motion made by Magistrate Eldridge and seconded by Magistrate Logsdon to appoint Iva Davis to the Assessment Appeals Board, replacing George Chapman, and appoint B.J. Senior, replacing Matt Weaver, with terms to expire May 2nd, 2020. Motion carried unanimously. Police Merit Board. Motion made by Magistrate Linkins and seconded by Magistrate Helms to reappoint Norman Brown to the Police Merit Board with a term to expire May 1st, 2021. Motion carried unanimously. Second public comment, none. Announcements. Magistrate Logsdon thanked Judge Vogel and Deputy Judge Executive John Black for their efforts in getting approval for the installation of a red light at Kentucky 329 and 22. Magistrate Eldridge thanked the road department for their work on Maple Leaf. He announced the county's surplus auction is scheduled for Saturday, June 3rd. Magistrate Hounds discussed a recent water rescue on Ash Avenue during heavy rains and flooding, how easy it is for vehicles to be swept away in these circumstances, and the need for the public to obey the signs and barricades when set up. Magistrate Tice discussed the improvement of traffic flow and safety at intersection of Commerce Parkway and Highway 393 South. Magistrate Likens announced Perfection Group made a presentation on energy conservation 2 years ago. The Building and Maintenance Committee will be recommending proceeding with an RFQ for energy conservation measures in all county buildings. Judge Vogel announced Creasy Mahan Nature Preserve is welcoming volunteers to assist with cleanup from the tornado in Goshen over the weekend. Volunteers should contact Tavia Cathcart at Creasy Mahan. Motion made by Magistrate Dye and seconded by Magistrate Eldridge to adjourn the meeting. Motion carried unanimously. The meeting was adjourned at 3:22.
You've heard the reading of our minutes from May 2nd. Is there a motion to accept? Moved and seconded. Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Time now for public comment. That's the time during our meeting when anyone who would like to address the fiscal court about a community issue is able to do so. Anyone who's come to speak at any of the public hearings, we'd ask you to wait until the time of the hearing. We welcome now the representative for Senator Rand Paul,
Thank you,
Robert
Judge.
Augustine.
Thank you, and thank you, Court. Okay, I was looking for the microphone, sorry. I just wanted to come in, I like to come in periodically and remind you and your constituents who may be watching at home that Senator Paul's office offers a great amount of constituent services. If you or someone you know is hitting a roadblock with a federal agency, getting veterans benefits or Social Security, or having an issue with the VA, I would just remind you and your constituents to give us a call at 502-582-5341. Maybe visit our website, paul.senate.gov, for a full listing of all the services that we do offer through Senator Paul's office. Again, that's 502-582-5341. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, Judge, Magistrates. Let's see. I'm Julie Barr, the Oldham County Clerk, and I just wanted to make the citizens aware of something that is happening at all 3 locations of the Oldham County Clerk's office. I met with Riverlink and asked them if they would agree to let us be a facility to sell transponders. It just seemed to make sense to me. Our citizens will probably use the bridges as much as anyone, but they aren't very happy about going downtown. So they agreed. At this point, I think we're the only clerk's office in the Commonwealth that is doing this. But you will be able to come into any of the offices, buy the transponder. At this time, we're only using the little adhesive transponders. It's $20 cash, and that is their rule. It is good for 10 passes over the bridge, but they walked me through this to show that it's very easy. You can, after you get your transponder and you pay your $20, you can actually go to riverlink.com and you can set up an account, hook your credit card to it, tell it how much you want to always maintain a dollar amount in your account, and it will just feed it. I set mine for $20, so if I cross the bridge and it deducts, I have a minimum of $6 to always be left in my account, and a maximum of $20 to ensure that I always have enough to cross both ways. And one reason that I feel like that this is something that the clerk's office should really be involved in, especially the counties that are going to utilize the bridge the most, is because if you do not pay your tolls and they bill you, and they bill you again, and they bill you again, you will eventually have to come see me because they are going to suspend your registration. So just thought it was something that we could go on and help the people with. You don't have to go downtown. You can just come into any of the 3 offices and buy your transponders.
All right, good. That's a good new service that we'll have available here. And does anybody have anything they'd like to say about that? Do you happen to know, I've heard that, but I have, you know, how you hear things, but that may not be true. I've heard
No.
that if you just, let's say you don't cross the bridge, but you've got $20 on your account or whatever, $10 at the end of the year, they sweep your account and you have to start all over again.
Well, I will ask for clarification, but that was brought up at a clerk's meeting one time when Riverlink was presenting to all the clerks. And what my understanding is, and again, I will ask for clarification, I'll come back to the court, is that if you have an account and you have a dollar amount in there and it sits idle for so long that they will not sweep the entire account, but they will take a small fee out so it doesn't go stagnant and become inactive. They do that so it does remain active, but I don't know what that amount is. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, well, thank you for getting that, Julie. Anyone else would like to address the fiscal court at this point? Seeing no one, I'm going to close public comment, and we'll go on to our first item today, and that's the a bid opening. We've put out a bid for auditor services. We have an annual audit here, and we're trying to, let's say, drive the cost of the audit down as far as we can, and find out. The audit has been done mostly by the state auditor, but the state auditor is not free. They charge us as well. So here's a proposal from Roy Hunter, CPA, contact person Edward Lentz. Total bid not to exceed $12,925. So, and I assume, Melissa Horn, do we have any others? Okay, one bid. All right, thank you. We'll take that under consideration. All right. The next item we're going to go to right now is to pay our bills. We do this every 2 weeks, the bills that come in from the county. And the magistrates have all had a chance to have the documents, you know, that list the bills for the last several days. They've had them in their possession. So when you're ready, I'll accept a motion to pay the bills.
Second.
Is there any discussion here on any of these bills? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion passes 7-1. The next item on our agenda is going to be a public hearing. It's the second public hearing for a budget amendment. A budget amendment is a document that we submit to the state periodically because over the course of the fiscal year, which is June 30th or July 1st to June 30th each year, different things happen. Unanticipated expenses come in, unexpected revenue is also received. So I'm going to ask our County Treasurer, Melissa Horn, to review the budget amendment. This is the second reading of the budget amendment, so it is a public hearing, and I'm going to ask when she's finished if there is anyone here who would like to speak in favor or in opposition to anything they hear during her presentation.
This is ordinance KOC 17-200-376. It's a budget amendment to increase the receipts of the general fund by $583,741.98, and also to increase expenditures by the same amount. There is no impact on reserves with this amendment. There are 4 main components of it. The first one is to reflect that this fiscal year has 27 pay periods and not 26. We're going to increase the insurance premium tax revenue in order to offset this. The second item is the sheriff's vehicle to recognize the insurance reimbursement we received to help offset the purchase of a new vehicle. The third item was the building inspector vehicle. We also received insurance reimbursement on that. And the fourth item is to add personnel needed at the jail and operating expenses there for increased population. And to cover those expenses, we're recognizing additional federal and other county revenue.
All right. Is there anyone here who had come to speak in favor or in opposition to this budget amendment? Right, seeing no one, I'll close that portion of the public hearing and ask if there are any magistrates who would like to make a recommendation to accept the budget amendment.
So moved.
Magistrate Tice?
Yeah.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on these changes? All right, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Now, the next item, we're going to have quite a few public hearings today. The next item has to do with a public hearing regarding county road aid and the local government assistance funds. Stan Clark, would you like to review that? Or, yeah, I guess, I'm surprising you a little bit, so I thought you're going to do the next one, so we'll just say this. We received, what, about, we get about $634,000 from the state for county road aid. So at this public hearing, if they're, as such, people in the community are invited to step forward and recommend any roads, county roads that they would like to see have work done on with these funds. Normally, honestly, we generally don't have anybody that steps forward. We do have an evaluation system that each year grades all the roads in the county, and we approach each paving season by doing what our road evaluation system says are the weakest roads and the ones that need most attention. We think our roads in Oldham County, we feel we've kept in good shape. There are always some you're going to be able to find that say, I think this one has gone for 15 or 20 years and definitely needs improvement, and those are the ones that we get to. But our public hearing is designed to allow anyone who would like to address that in some way to do so. So, is there anyone who would like to make a recommendation on a road that we may or may not have evaluated? We're happy to hear someone say something. So, I'd just like to have you, because it's a public hearing, you're actually sworn in, and would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the entire truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Please state your name and address.
Nathan Merrill. I live at,
Oops, no, I believe you've come to talk about the public hearing in regard to...
but I do want to address that particular side of it because that's part of my presentation a little bit later.
All right.
This is Sadler's Mill Road. There is a point at which on Sadler's Mill Road, and you can see off in the distance, there's a blind hill that there's a ditch that's near level with the surface of the right-of-way. And this isn't just after one rainfall, it's actually a regular occurrence. This one is really bad, where the road is almost completely submerged. On that particular blind hill, what you'll have is you'll have people that veer into oncoming traffic just to navigate a flooded roadway. And so, since that was part of your part of the discussion here, I wanted to bring that up to you. I think that the drainage is bad on this road, and that particular side of it is coming from Oldham County Country Club. It's not the only spot where the drain is close to level with the right-of-way, but that one is the worst. And rainwater comes down the hill, and obviously leaves and limbs and things like that create barricades, and ultimately ends up flooding over to the other side of the road and into the neighbors' yards, front yards on the other side. So I did want to bring
All right.
that up to you.
Thank you.
Okay?
That's fine. You've taken advantage of what that opportunity was. Is there anyone else that wanted to say something about roads? So, all right, well, we appreciate that, so I'm going to close the public hearing now and ask if there is a motion that, pardon, we don't need a motion on this? We'll go forward. Now we're going to have the first reading of the budget for the year 17-18. That's fiscal year 17, the balance of this year from July 1st on, and then the first half of 2018. And this is our County Chief Financial Officer, Stan Clark.
Hi, this is the first reading of the budget. The main thing to take from this is an ordinance, a budget ordinance that requires 2 readings. First reading is to put it out there basically and let the public know. And we'll inform anybody that's interested in this budget that we keep a copy of it here at the fiscal court. Just come into the judge-exec office and you will ask to see a copy of the budget if you want to inspect it. But the first reading, I'm going to do a summary reading of it. It's ordinance number KOC 17-220-381, and it's a balanced budget. And of the funds that we're bringing in, we'll be spending as follows. The general fund will be receiving $24,718,000. $9 million of that is capital projects, which is the money for the completion of the new detention center. We'd be spending $3,461,000 on roads. On the jail, would we be spending $3,369,000 as proposed? Then a fund, the LGA fund, Local Government Assistance, Economic Assistance Fund, which is a lot of various source grants and projects that come from the state. A lot of it's a pass-through money. But the total projected budget for that fund is $5,542,500. Our central dispatch budget proposed is $1,083,788. Then we have some small funds for police of $12,200 and road maintenance fund of $10,000, which gives us a total budget expense next year of $38,197,959 as in a summary. And like I say, it's a balanced budget. We have revenues equal to all those expenses.
Okay, thank you. Budget will be available in the county judge's office for anybody to examine. We'll also be printing it in the newspaper and on our website. Now we'll go on to the first reading of a proposed ordinance. This has to do with street addresses and numbers. We have a problem in Oldham County that's been identified that we need to address, and I'd like to call on Magistrate Leslie to introduce this ordinance.
Yes, thank you, Judge. This is an issue that came up to me approximately a year ago by Kevin Nuss, because our current addressing ordinance is 40 years old. In the last 40 years, there's been an awful lot of changes. Also, during that time period, there have been a variety of different groups have taken on the responsibility of giving people the proper address for their residence or their business. So we try to address all those issues. Kevin called me and asked me if he wanted to come to the court or if I'd go down to his facility, and I said I would go to his facility. And much to my surprise, I thought it would be Kevin and myself being the only ones that would be there speaking. Well, we had a chief from every fire department. We had EMS there. We had a representative from every police agency. We have the GIS manager, who is the individual who is in charge of actually giving out proper addresses And we also had Jim Urban from Planning and Development there. I was a little bit shocked to see a whole room full of people. So we've been working on this ordinance for a little over a year. And under Section 2 penalties, during our Safety Committee meeting today, and that's your last page, it says, written notice will be given for deficiencies to be corrected within 7 days. If not, a fine will be issued. I talked to Tate Combs about eliminating that, those two sentences. And since John had already signed off on this, he said he didn't feel that there should be any problem with us proceeding with this as currently written. So that's, we have tried, as we've had meetings throughout the year, one person after another person brings up a different issue. And so this has been rewritten quite a few times to come up with the first reading of the ordinance that you have in front of you. I think it's a good ordinance, and I think we've asked for anybody who's involved in the addressing of this to please contact us. So we've tried to reach out to everyone who was involved in the writing of this ordinance. And so I believe it's a good one, and that's a synopsis of the addressing ordinance.
All right, so this is the first reading of an ordinance repealing and replacing ordinance KOC 87-332 or 320.3 relating to the addressing identification markers for properties in Oldham County. This will be on the website. We'll also print this, but the main thing that people want to get is that our emergency service providers are very concerned that a lot of people are not putting addresses on their property. They're not identifying their mailboxes on both sides. They can't see some of the numbers that are out there. So when you call for help, when help comes, but if it can't find you, obviously it's going to be less effective or not effective at all. So we felt there's a public safety need here to get everyone on board to identify their property with reflective numbers and have them on both sides of your mailbox. There are some architectural considerations in here if you have a stone carving with your number in it or something like that. But please read it. Please get on board. It's for everyone's safety in the community, and all of our emergency service providers, police, fire, EMS, have all asked for help in being able to come to the right address, know where to go when they're called for emergency service. So there's a good rationale behind it, and it's not oppressive, but it's something that we all need to do to have a common public safety in the community. So that's our first reading. We'll be having a second reading and public hearing on June 6th. So if you're concerned in some way about that, please read about it on our website or in the newspaper. We're going to go on now to the second reading of a public hearing regarding a zoning map amendment in the 4800 block of Sadler Mill Road. I'm going to ask our planning and zoning representative, Amy Alvey, to introduce the proposed change.
Brooke will be up here. She is on her way. I'm looking to see where her presentation is. It's yours. Sorry. Just a moment here to see. Just a moment to see where she's at.
All right.
Sorry, I got stuck with the building permit downstairs.
All right. knew this snuck up on you. All right, Brooke Radcliffe is here now, and you're invited to proceed.
Brooke Beeman with Oldham County Planning and Development Services.
You
Sorry.
got married. I'm sorry. Apologize.
It's okay. Apologize for my absence. I was helping somebody with a building permit downstairs. The applicant is requesting approval of a zoning map amendment from R2A to R4. I'm a little out of breath. For the construction of 10 condo units on 2.18 acres. The property is off of Sadler's Mill Road, which is located off of Highway 393 in Buckner. Just wanted to go over the case history with you. The applicant went forward to Technical Review Committee in January of 2017, appeared before the Planning Commission in February of 2017. The Planning Commission did recommend approval to Fiscal Court on a vote of 6-5 for the zoning map amendment, and they also approved the preliminary plan on a vote of 11-0. The first reading of this ordinance was on April 18, 2017. All of the public notice requirements have been met, and now you are here today to review the second reading, and it is the public hearing today as well. This is the current zoning of the property and the surrounding properties. As you can see, it is zoned R2A. It is bounded by R2A to the east, R2 to the south and to the north, and there is some R1 as well to the west, but mostly R2 to the west. This is the future land use map. This comes from the comprehensive plan. It was adopted in 2014. As you can see, the property that is outlined in red as the subject property, and it was believed to remain as a single-family subdivision. And again, the future land use map is just a guide for development. It's based on a forecast of existing land uses as well as demographics and trends of the area. So the maximum density in the current zoning classification, R2A, is 5.81 density units per acre. The property is 2.18 acres, so that would net a total of 12.66 lots. And that's just gross land use area. That's not utilities or anything else, but just to give you an idea of what the proposed density is and what the existing density is, so you could compare. The maximum density in R4 is 16 dwelling units per acre. So if the zoning change is approved, technically, they could have 34.88 units on this property. However, the applicant is proposing a total of 10 units, which is what the development plan proposed and was approved by the Planning Commission. So within those two units, within those two buildings, there are 5 attached condo units. Attached units are not a permitted use in R2A zoning classification. They are, however, a permitted use in R4, which is why the applicant is requesting for a zoning map amendment. And you can see the difference here between R2A and R4 from our zoning ordinance. Specifically, if you look at the intent of R2A, it says to allow low to medium density detached single family, and then R4A says low intensity non-residential uses and detached units as well. So each 1,588 square foot unit will have 2 bedrooms and a 750 square foot garage. Each unit will have a 2-car wide driveway located off of the private drive, bringing the parking total to 4 spaces per condo unit, or 40 spaces total. This is the development plan that was submitted with the application that was approved by the Planning Commission. As you can see, the 10 condo units are split up into 2 different buildings, 5 in each one. It's located off of a private drive off of Sadler's Mill. The applicant did state in testimony at the Planning Commission that the private drive will remain a private drive in perpetuity, and if approved and they do move forward, they would record that on the record plat when it goes forward with approval. There is a 20-foot landscape buffer area on the rear and side property lines, in addition to a 10-foot vehicular use area landscape buffer on the front property line. 26,600 square feet of open space is proposed in the rear of the property, which will be between Golf View Court of Morgan Place subdivision. And this does exceed the requirement. The requirement based on the lot size is 2,500 square feet of open space. So you can see the 20-foot landscape buffer on the rear property that buffers from R2 zoning district and the rear, which is Morgan Place subdivision, in addition to the 20-foot landscape buffer on both the west and the east side, and a 10-foot landscape buffer between what we consider a vehicular use area, which is this driveway, and Sadler's Mill Road. So this is the north view looking into the subject property. You can see it backs up to homes in Morgan Place subdivision, and those homes are located off of Golf View Court. This is the northwest view, looking back toward the Oldham County Water Access Easement. And again, these homes that you see in this photo are a part of Morgan Place subdivision. This is the west view looking down Sadler's Mill Road towards Kamer Place and Heather Hill. And I'm actually standing in the subject property in this photo. Again, just another west view on Sadler's Mill Road. This is the northeast view. You can see the direct adjoining property owner to the right, and additionally, the homes in the rear that are located in Morgan Place. This is the adjoining property to the east, which is 4801 Sadler's Mill Road. You can see on the aerial map, it's the property that's circled in blue. So this is a view of that property's home from the subject property. And this is the east view. It's looking back towards the Sadler's Mill and Highway 393 intersection. This is the Oldham County access easement for the Oldham County Water Tower, and this is bounded on the west of the property. This is a view from Golf View Drive. So I'm standing in Morgan Place subdivision at the cul-de-sac, really about in this location, just to give you an idea of what these properties would be looking into. This is the best view I could get without trespassing. So the properties that are circled in blue on the aerial map are the homes that you're looking at currently. So in summary, the applicant is requesting approval for a zoning map amendment on 2.18 acres. The proposed change is from R2A residential to R4 residential. And I did want to just go over KRS 100, Chapter 213. This is where our planning and zoning statutes come from. And I know you guys don't see a lot of zoning map amendments, but I just wanted to lay out for you, and this is also in your staff report when you do decide to make your decision, what you can base that decision on. And as it states, it's either based on the adoption of the comprehensive plan and its accordance with the comprehensive plan, or that the existing zoning classification is inappropriate and the proposed zoning classification is appropriate, or that there have been major changes of an economic, physical, or social nature within the area involved that were not anticipated. And then just wanted to briefly go over the binding elements that were adopted by the Planning Commission. These were tied to the preliminary plan, and you can, of course, if you do decide to approve the request, you can add to these binding elements. The majority of them are comments from the county engineer, specifically items 4 through 6 that are related to soil and erosion control and stormwater management. I'm not sure if he's here to comment on those, but basically he wanted to add those into the binding elements just because we do have somewhat new of a stormwater ordinance, and he wanted to make sure that those items were taken care of and were clear. Another important binding element to note is that the private drive will be maintained by the homeowners and will never be accepted into the county road network. And a note will be recorded in the deed restrictions and on the record plat stating that all entrances and drive areas will remain private in perpetuity. And that's all that I have.
All right, before we go on to listen to the presentation from the applicant, does any member of the fiscal court have a question for Brooke? All right, seeing none, thank you. And now we're going to have a presentation by the applicant. I might just go over the ground rules here before we do that. Anyone who is here to speak today will be is able to do so, but if you come up and speak, raise questions, you have to stay for the questioning phase. And if you decide to leave, your testimony is stricken from the record. And anyone who wishes to give testimony is going to have to be sworn in, so other than the attorneys. And so be prepared for that. All right, we'll allow 50 minutes, up to a maximum of 50 minutes for a presentation by the applicant, and I believe Mr. Barry Baxter is going to do that.
That's correct. Thank you, Your Honor. Barry Baxter, I'm an attorney here on LaGrange, 117 West Main Street. I represent the applicant, Mary Vanderbark. Mary is seated back here. She is present. She will testify. We also have our engineer with us today, Bill Barry. Bill is also prepared to answer questions, and he will testify. The other members of that team that are here today, and they may or may not testify, our builder is a gentleman named Tim Menard. Mr. Menard, his wife, Ms. Vanderbark, and her husband are the ones who are going to ultimately buy this piece of property. They have an option to purchase it. And if they are successful today, the idea would be they would purchase this piece of property and they would develop it. This is somewhat duplicative of the things that Brooke had to tell you all. We've got an application for a zone change on 2.1 acres on Sadler Mill Road, roughly the 5,000 block. It would be for 2 buildings consisting of 5 units each for patio homes. In order to be able to do that, we need to rezone this property from R2A to R4. That request was recommended by the Planning Commission at the end of February, along with approval of our development plan. The intent here is to have, and we'll get into the specifics about building materials and things like that a little more with Mary, but the intent is to have a very nice upscale product that folks would be living in. It's geared kind of towards seniors, although obviously anybody is free to purchase this product, and folks that are in the vicinity of and play golf would obviously have a particular interest in purchasing one of these units. I did want to show you all that in the existing zoning, in the R2A zoning, and there is a potential to have 5.8 units per acre, and Brooke's math was a little better than mine probably. I estimated roughly 11 units could be constructed on this piece of property, on this 2.1 acre piece of property. R4 obviously allows for a lot more density, but what we are proposing is actually within the range of what is allowed in the R2A. So it would be a 10-unit development, and that would be something that, you know, obviously once the zoning is changed, somebody can come back and ask to do something different, but they would have to ask for prior approval to be able to come back and do something different. We've got plans certain as it relates to our plan that's been approved, the development plan that's been approved. I did a little bit of math here in the R2A with sewers, and it's important to note that when this property was zoned, there was not sewers available to this piece of property. Sewers are now available, and that means that you can get a 7,500 acre or 7,500 square foot lot. I did my math there, and that's how I got to the 12.6 lots on the site, so roughly 12 lots, assuming that you could make the density, setbacks, et cetera, work. That's just to indicate that we're, that 2.6 units less than the potential density on this particular site. When we were at the Planning Commission, the commission found the following provisions of the comprehensive plan were met, and it was goal LU-2. It was to encourage the preservation and development of a range of housing opportunities. And we had some folks come in and testify about the need for this type of housing in the Buckner area. It's an alternative, a quality alternative to single-family residential, no maintenance, zero upkeep, and obviously there are people who are in the market not to have to mow their grass, not to have to clean the gutters, and those kinds of things. There is demographic changes, and I'm going to go through those a little bit with you, that show that there is an increased senior population in Oldham County. The other goals that were discussed by the Planning Commission was LU-2-4.4, and this is clearly an infill property. You saw from the aerial photographs that Brooke showed you that you've got housing all around it. This is a vacant lot that has sat vacant for a number of years. It has been for sale by the current owner, I believe, for over 10 years without getting somebody to buy the property. On the other side of the road is obviously the golf course, so there's not any other area of development that's going to go in. This lot, is going to have to be developed in some way, and it is by definition infill. So we've got, as we indicated, it's vacant land. There's existing residential dwellings on two sides. You got the Oldham County Water District Tower on a third side and the golf club on the fourth. What we believe is that the scale and the use is that's proposed is compatible with the surroundings and the existing uses. We're talking about single-family residential. I realize that this is a patio home product. We also have necessary community services and facilities that are available to serve the site. When we look at Oldham County and Buckner, they continue to grow in population, and the existing population continues to age. So as that happens, you've got a need for this type of product. I know that you all are aware there are a number of these products in LaGrange. There is one product like this in the Buckner area on Cedar Point, and then there are other patio homes that are available in the Crestwood area. But there is not a lot of this housing in the Buckner region. We had a neighborhood meeting. At the neighborhood meeting, we had people show up and inquire about when these lots were going to, or excuse me, these units were going to be available to purchase. We've had other people approach us about purchasing those units. At this point, we believe we have half of the 10 units pre-sold, which indicates to us there is a need for this type of housing in this area of the county. This is some statistical information that I got, and I verified this a couple different places, but if you just Google Oldham County and the total population, it pops up with a website called suburbanstats.org, which sounded like something that was made up to me, but I confirmed it on the census as well, the U.S. Census, that indicated that there were roughly 60,000 people in 2010, and that's grown by close to 3,000 people in 2014. In 2010, a third of the Oldham County's population nearly were over the age of 60. And then we got some records from the Transportation Cabinet that would indicate, based upon the 2010 census and then the 2017 records, that these are the increase in numbers of drivers in Oldham County over the age of 65. So it shows clearly that you've got a growing population of seniors who are going to be in the market for this type of product. This goes back to the infill that we talked about and the limited availability of patio homes. And as I told you before, we've got 5 commitments already to purchase half of the units. It's because of the proximity, I think, to the Wendell Park, and the golf course is probably a big part of what's going on here. In addition, you've got the situation with, I think you've got some changes in the area with the 393 underpass, overpass situation. I'm not exactly sure where you all are with that. I go by there and I keep waiting for them to punch under the railroad, but they don't seem like they're going to do that anytime soon. But that's going That's going to change access a little bit to that area of the county and open the county up for some different kinds of uses. The other component of this is that you will remember that Brooke described the amount of open space, and she described the fact that we've got I think we are nearly 10 times the amount of open space that would be required on this 2.1 acre lot. With that being the case, I know that the county has a big concern about impervious surfaces. We feel like, based upon what we're doing here, that we are minimizing the footprint that could be exposed if you had 11 houses, for example, with driveways emptying onto Sadler's Mill Road. We feel like that would cause there to be more impervious surfaces. So this is another benefit of trying to address it in this particular manner. She talked to you about KRS 100.213. It's part of my presentation as well, and she had indicated, I'm not going to bore you all with that because she went through all of this, so I'm going to jump to that. So Commissioner Arvin made a motion that was seconded by Commissioner McWilliams that recommended that the fiscal court approve this zoning map amendment, and these were the reasons that he stated should be followed and why he was making this recommendation. I'm sure that was included in your all's packet. I, again, will not bore you with that, but that was his basis based upon those components of the comprehensive plan. And I'm going to get Mary to come up here if I could for just a minute, and you're going to need to get sworn in and give your name and address, please.
Let's have everyone who would like to speak in behalf of this application, please stand. Anyone else besides Mary? All right. You all, Mary, swear to tell the truth, the entire truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Okay. Please state your name.
Mary Vandenbark,
Address.
address 1060 Bluegrass Parkway, LaGrange, Kentucky.
And Mary, you've been identified as the applicant with regard to this application for a zone change, is that correct?
Yes.
And so I want you, if you could please, to tell these folks exactly what it is that you're anticipating being built, when you're going to build it, how the building will go, and some features of this particular project, okay?
Okay, as previously stated, you all will be taking a vote today, so when we get that vote of yes, we plan to start the process to purchase the land, which has got a pending contract, so we plan to have that within 30 days of the final approval here. Start building immediately as soon as we have the land purchased. We expect to build both units, which is 2 buildings, 5 units each. We will build the roads and the foundations all at one time, and then we will build 1 unit as we go, as we finish. As Mr. Baxter indicated, we've already have very interested parties ready to purchase this, of at least 5, and I've actually received an email and a text today of 2 other realtors that have interested clients. Obviously the need is definitely there, and people are very excited about having the opportunity to be so close to the golf course and having maintenance-free exterior homes, as we are planning on doing. These properties will be completely brick on the exterior. They will be 1 level with a basement. The basement will be unfinished unless our contracts request the basement to be finished. They will be roughed in for plumbing, for a bathroom if someone wants to finish out those lower levels. The price range will range $275,000 to approximately $285,000. The total project will bring, as we indicated in our last meeting, approximately $2.8 million in property value, which you can convert that to what the taxes would be paid to the county. The properties, like I said, will be brick. The interiors will be of high quality with granite in every bathroom and kitchen. We will have hardwood floors, tiles in the bathrooms. These will have no vinyl siding on the exteriors. They have 2-car garages There's ability to park additional, 4 additional cars on the driveways. The county road.
Let me stop you real quick.
I'm sorry,
So there's 4 cars total,
4 cars total.
2 in the garage and 2 in the driveway.
Yes,
Not
I'm
4
sorry.
cars extra, not 6 cars.
Right, no,
Okay.
total 4 per property, which means there could be 40 cars parked on the property. The road itself will be maintained, as Mr. Baxter mentioned, by the association, the homeowners association. So that will not be a county road, and it will be deeded that way, that it will not be a county road. One other feature to keep the quality of these patio homes to where we believe it needs to be, these property homes will not be allowed to be rental homes. The person that resides in the home must be the homeowner or a direct relative, as a mother, grandmother, such things as that, and it will be deeded that way. So these will not become rental homes, which is a big factor in keeping the value and the quality of the property.
Okay, now the last thing noted on the slide indicates the average price per square foot is $167.65. Can you explain to the members of the court how you determined that figure?
Well, we had a lot of help from real estate agents in determining what current patio homes are going for in Oldham County. We used Cedar Point Village, which is right off of 146. It's just a few miles from the property in question. Based on the property there, and we also used Heather Hill Homes, Kamer Place Homes, and Morgan Place Homes to determine the values. Based on that, that's how we came up with that. The average per square foot is considerably higher than what the Morgan Place homes are selling for, and it's right on line with what Heather Hill is selling for. So as far as property values, this fits right into, basically, it fits right into the adjoining areas.
And you did talk about the interior finishes a little bit, but can you tell them a little bit about this slide, which would be what the interior is going to kind of look like? I mean, bedrooms and things like that?
Yes, the bedroom, it'll be 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. It will have custom kitchens with all the most updated appliances. And although the plan shows each unit exactly as is, as each contract's signed, we can modify the interior to make it more suitable to whoever might be purchasing that. Let's see. There is a full basement, as I mentioned, 2-car garage. I think that's everything.
I think that covers it. Okay. All right. You talked about these things as well, and tell them about the landscaping.
Yeah, Greenscapes has already drawn up a landscape plan that puts the proper type of foliage in the proper areas for fast growing in the areas in the back to create a little bit more of a barrier between the homes behind us. Things that will not impact the root systems of the properties. And everything, and obviously everything would be custom done based on how the driveways sit and the other trees that are already on the property.
Why did you pick Greenscapes to do this work for you?
Because they are a licensed landscaper, and Tim and R Constructions has used them and found them to be very reliable and very efficient.
Okay, and you've already gone, I mean, you realize you're going to have to get a landscape plan approved by commission staff, correct?
Yes, and that's why we used a licensed person to begin with.
Okay, all right. Let's see what our next slide is here. Now, describe for them what this is.
This is one of the buildings. This shows 5 of the units with the 2-car garages. Like I said, 1 story, easy access in for anyone that might have any difficulty walking. There will be no steps on the first floor. Everything will be located on the first floor that is needed. However, like I said, the basement is available to finish or just use as storage or whatever the person desires.
Okay, and then I think the next slide, what does this depict?
This is the side view and the back view of the property. There is a covered porch. You can't really see in that picture, but I believe the back doors are actually inset. Yeah, this drawing doesn't depict it as well, but there's actually a covered porch over the back doors.
Okay, and then the top is the side view?
Yes.
Okay. And that's the landscape plan you talked about?
Yes, that is what he has drawn for us. And if your eyes are strong enough, you can read what all those plants are. I cannot do that from here. But like I said, he is a licensed landscaper, and he has advised us that these would be the best from the purposes of what we want to do as far as barrier in the back and beautification of the project.
Okay. All right. And I think this is a slide that I'm going to have. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Mr. Berry? You've already been sworn, have you not, sir?
I have.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Bill Berry, Centerfield Engineering,
And
Crestwood, Kentucky.
Crestwood, Kentucky. And you are the engineer on this project.
Correct?
Is this a drawing that you prepared?
Yes, it is.
You are familiar with the site, are you not, sir?
Yes, sir.
Can you describe, if you would please, just how it is you came up with the footprint of putting these buildings in this location and some of the features about this drawing, if you don't mind?
Well, let's see. The east end of the property is be on our right, is going to be excavated somewhat down to get a similar elevation for the west end of the property, with a couple of foot difference in elevation between the eastern building and the western building. And all drives will drain towards the front, or rather towards Sadler's Mill Road, and there'll be a drainage swale in the front with a detention basin on the west end, a drainage swale in the back, going into the same detention basin.
Now, I believe, Mr. Berry, you testified in front of the Planning Commission that this site was somewhat ideal from the perspective that you didn't anticipate causing any of the neighbors any drainage problems. Because the way it lays. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right. If you don't mind, just can you sort of outline for them how it lays in that manner? And you might want to draw on the screen and show them how the natural lay goes.
Well, let's see here. Am I writing now? Okay. Well, the natural drainage is coming down somewhat like this. And it goes through a pipe and cross into Cambridge Place.
Okay, and so are you going to have to rework that line a little bit along the back of the property?
Reworking the line to approach this situation right here. I didn't quite.
Well, we're not going through the building, but you're
No.
going around the building, right?
Somewhere, and then the front is coming down this way.
Okay, and
I'm not a very good artist, by the way.
all right, and
My
then-
computer works better.
would you show me, if you would, just kind of circle for me where the detention's going to be?
Petition would be, well, my finger is not seeming to get the right spots, right in there. If you can,
Here? All right.
okay, let me try it again. Okay,
Okay, so that's where you anticipate the detention to be.
correct.
And do you think you're going to have any issues with drainage, being able to size that basin large enough to make sure that the runoff doesn't affect the downstream property?
Correct.
Okay. Now, another thing about this is it appears to me that we have one entrance on the Sadler's Mill Road.
That's correct.
And can you explain why that would be something that you consider to be beneficial as compared to having multiple entrances onto that road?
Well, you've only got one area that existing traffic people will be looking for. It's not like you've got several entrances that you have to be anticipating somebody pulling out in front of you. This has got a very good sight distance at this location. I don't know. What do you
Is
think?
there a reason why this appears to be a little bit offset to me? Is there a reason why you chose to offset it as opposed to putting it here in the middle?
Well, because I had a more appropriate area there on Sadler's Mill coming into the property, because it has to, the property is gonna be draining, it's gonna be sloped somewhat right about in this area, down to this next level.
Okay. And then the next question, that there was something raised, there was some discussion at the Planning Commission about whether or not this road, this private road, is large enough in order to be able to accommodate a garbage truck. Because my understanding is that each unit will have its own individual trash receptacle, just like I've got at my house. and that the garbage truck's gonna have to make their way in there to empty the trash. Does that appear to be an issue to you from an engineering perspective, or is there adequate width on that roadway for a garbage truck to get in and out?
Well, the truck can get in and if it's not a problem, pull in, back down one end and then turn around, come back out.
Okay, and is that something that would be facilitated by these little knobs right here?
Well, it could be, but that's basically for a normal person coming in for a turnaround.
Okay. All right,
Now,
so, go
whether
ahead.
we, excuse me, go ahead.
Okay, is there anything that you found to be particularly difficult for you as you worked with this site from a design standpoint?
That's a pretty good question. I seem to always have problems. You know, trying to get this to drain properly and get these buildings in here, but, you know, it's worked out okay.
Okay, now, if I were to tell you that there is a little more than 550 feet of road frontage on Sadler's Mill Road, and that in the R2 area, it would require 7,500 square feet per lot and 50 feet minimum road frontage. Without knowing about the other setbacks, do you believe you could get 11 lots on there on that particular site?
Oh, I'd say 8 to 10 probably, but that wasn't what I was.
I understand. I'm
I
just
wasn't-
asking
I
a
wasn't
question.
asked- yeah.
So if somebody came to you and they wanted to subdivide this, you think you could get anywhere from 8 to 10 lots on here
Possibly,
with 8 to 10 driveways?
right.
Okay. Okay, I believe that's all the question I have,
All right,
Mr. Mayor.
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So this was raised at the commission, okay, and that's why I brought it up with Mr. Berry. This is how trash and garbage are going to be handled. This is Heritage Hills, another development here in the county. This is an aerial I got off of Google Earth. I believe their trash is handled in the same manner that we're proposing to handle here, and it doesn't look to me like there's any real way for the garbage truck. I mean, he's going to have to bump around to turn around, just like what we talked about here. And I apologize, I don't know the name of this. This is just down the street from the school board building. This is some duplexes. I think Anderson's Sales and Services just to, not really the south, but the south of this picture, off of the picture. And there's some duplexes. That's an aerial. And then here's some patio homes on Highway 146 here in LaGrange, which likewise collect trash in the same manner, and the garbage truck has to access that particular site and turn around in some way. As I told you before, the plan calls for more than 10 times the required open space for the proposed R4 or the existing R2A, which is 250 square feet per unit of open space. Our density is less than the currently allowable density of 5.86 units per acre, and that we would have less impervious surface if we were to end up, and Mr. Berry's testimony would be 8 to 10 units allowed. We still believe there'd be less impervious surface. We believe we're making use of existing infrastructure in the area, and we're promoting the infill goal in the comprehensive plan. It provides another housing option for residents of Oldham County and in the Buckner area in particular. That single access point, because traffic was a big complaint at the Planning Commission. And the reality of it is we were not required to have a traffic analysis or a traffic study for this particular site. Traffic was something that was complained about, and we believe that the single access point provides a more desirable and a safer way for people to access Sadler's Mill Road than having multiple driveways, 8 to 10 driveways exiting onto that road. And quite frankly, the traffic concerns for 10 units here are going to be the same as for 10 houses if somebody were to put 10 houses on this site. So, you know, you're going to, if somebody develops it as 10 houses, you're still going to have the same traffic issue that you've got, and you're still not going to be required to have a traffic analysis, and you're still not going to have a traffic study. From our perspective, Buckner is undergoing substantial physical changes with the rerouting of that highway. And we talked about Cedar Point being the only other comparable housing in that area of the county, while it exists more widely in other areas. And so we're looking at goal LU-2, which is encourage development of a range of housing opportunities. Mary talked about this a little bit. This was the market analysis that they did and how they came up with the prices for square foot for the various housing units in the area, including Cedar Point Village. And I don't know what that is, Jim. Can I? That way, okay. And that's it. That concludes our presentation. Obviously, we're prepared to answer any questions you all may have at the appropriate time.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr.
Judge.
Baxter. We'll proceed on now with testimony and questions by those opposing the application. Any opposition will have?
Others in favor, Judge.
Pardon?
Any in favor?
Oh, excuse me. Were there others in favor that wanted to speak about this? Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, come ahead.
I'm Dan Trent. I live in LaGrange, Kentucky, formerly in Heather Hill. I'm one of the people that wants one of these homes because I sold my home in Heather Hill in January. And we're looking, I'm part of this growing senior population, and we're looking for that type of housing. And don't see a deterrent or distraction in any way with the homes in that area, particularly on Sadler Mill Road. No competition with Kamer, with Morgan Place, or with Heather Hill. And I think it's important to note that this property is located on Sadler Mill Road. It's not in any of those subdivisions. And again, I'm Dan Trent. I sent you a letter. You didn't call, so I assume you didn't have any questions. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the application? All right, seeing no one, then we will move on to the next phase of the hearing, and that is the testimony and questions by the opposition. And ask everyone who is going to speak in opposition to this to please stand and raise your hands now.
You just switch it over to the,
Do you need that?
I'm sorry. I was already sworn in, but I'm sorry. But
You swear to tell the truth, the entire truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
I've provided, taken the liberty of compiling some packets for the magistrates, and you, sir, Mr. Judge Vogel. Can I pass them out to you?
All right. Pardon me? No, we didn't give you have to give your name and address. You haven't done that yet.
Yes, sir. My name's Nathan Merrill. I live at 4705 Sadler's Mill Road. I want to thank you, Judge Vogel, and the magistrates for allowing me to speak today. As elected officials and magistrates of Oldham County, you are tasked with the oversight of balanced yet progressive growth, ranging from commerce to housing, including the infrastructure which supports such development. Oftentimes, your decision affects large amounts of individuals' lives, and the map amendment before you today is no different. I've come before you today as a concerned resident residing just 3 doors down from the property in question, and speaking in opposition for the many voices that were unable to attend. As many on the panel are aware, this area is a suburban part of Oldham County, comprised of Heather Hills, Kamer Place, and Morgan Place neighborhoods, including 6 additional single-family properties located directly on Sadler's Mill Road. All properties in this area are single-family homes. There are no multifamily dwellings in this area. The applicant's proposed development would provide for as many as 40 additional parking spaces added to a right-of-way measuring roughly 20 feet wide. Sadler's Mill Road is the main artery servicing Heather Hills and Kamer Place subdivisions, providing access to 231 homes. A road comprised of 2 blind hills and 1 blind 90-degree turn, and a stretch roughly 1/2 of a mile long. A road providing access for all maintenance personnel and many club members housing their golf carts at the Oldham County Country Club. A road boasting a ditch to one side and no shoulder on either side. A road so narrow and unsafe, with vehicles regularly speeding, endangering those who choose to walk, jog, or bike in recreation. Sadler's Mill Road is just not equipped to handle the additional traffic this proposed development would bring. I've provided you with a picture looking back towards 393 at one of the blind hills on this road in order to give the panel a perspective of the issue at hand. In this picture, I am standing about where the proposed entrance to the development would be according to the applicant's site plan. And as you can tell, off in the distance there, it is a blind hill. This is another picture taken just down the road looking at a second blind hill. In it, you can see the deteriorated condition of the road after a rainfall. The culprit of this is the ditch on the side of Oldham County Country Club, wherein at one point, the height of the ditch is near level with the surface of the right-of-way. These are regular occurrences, and regardless of the outcome of the map amendment before you today, this is an issue that must be addressed in order to avoid vehicles from crossing into oncoming traffic on a blind hill just to navigate a flooded roadway. The applicant states that the existing zoning classification is inappropriate and that the proposed zoning classification is appropriate. I couldn't disagree anymore. The existing zoning classification of R2A would provide for custom high-end single-family homes on large lots as predefined by the county years ago and what currently exists today. In addition, all properties situated on this road, which too have a zoning classification of R2A, provide for between 1/2 to 1.5 acres of land. These are not 2-bedroom, 2-bath, multi-family units. Provided is a map of the surrounding neighborhoods, illustrating the different zoning classifications. As you can see, all residential areas surrounding this vacant property are R1, R2, and R2A. This map amendment, if passed, would be considered spot zoning and arbitrary, as the proposed development is not in keeping with the character of the surrounding neighborhoods. The applicant, in accordance with KRS 100.213, must prove in part their zoning classification is in agreement with the Oldham County Comprehensive Plan, formally adopted in 2014, and as such has cited specific goals and objectives of said plan. Goal LU1 is to provide for planned and orderly growth in order to protect land from premature or unsuitable growth, with the objective stating in part utilize the development review process to ensure that future land uses are compatible with surrounding land uses. While the applicant is proposing a residential use, the way she is seeking to achieve this would be considered non-compatible under the Oldham County Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance, as R1, R2, and R2A classifications are designed to preserve and protect the character of low to medium density detached single-family areas and neighborhoods. While the proposed R4 classification is designed to allow for higher density residential and low intensity non-residential uses. High-density residential uses would not be in keeping with the unique character of the surrounding neighborhoods in this area. Goal LU2 states to encourage the preservation and development of a range of housing opportunities, with the objective LU2-4 addressing affordable housing opportunities within all areas of Oldham County, including programs, policies, or incentives within the land use element to ensure that Oldham County has appropriate tools to guide the provision of the range of housing opportunities. With subsection 4 stating, promote infill development of affordable housing in order to take advantage of existing infrastructure. Now, as I interpret this, Goal LU24 and subsection 4 is geared specifically towards affordable housing opportunities, including the infill development of such housing. And with an alleged value of $280,000 per unit, this development does not meet the criteria spelled out under Goal LU24 of low to moderate household income, rendering this argument inapplicable and moot. Independent action was taken creating a petition in opposition to the proposed map amendment, and today has garnered 168 signatures. These signatures have been cross-referenced and verified through Oldham County Property Valuation Administration as individuals owning and residing within the communities of Heather Hills, Kamer Place, Morgan Place, and individual properties located on Sadler's Mill Road. Of the 57 comments submitted, many focus on traffic and character of the area as a major concern. I provided you a copy of the petition, including comments, and would like to read just a few from the list. Scott Moore writes, "No to any multifamily housing in our neighborhood. We choose this neighborhood because of the beautiful single-family homes." Christy Vowles writes, "This type of development will seem out of place with the surrounding areas. Also, this area already has more than enough traffic without adding a high number of residents in a small space." Holly Simpson writes, "Please do not create more traffic hazard on Sadler's Mill 393 blind intersection. This road is narrow with blind entrances for the homes already on this road." Diane Harcourt writes, "This is totally out of character with the area." These comments and signatures are the voices of the people residing in this community, and should be given great weight, as the applicant's proposed development would have a direct impact on their daily lives. The applicant is more than within the framework of the current zoning classification to construct high-end, single-family homes should they choose, infilling, as she states, on vacant land. There are currently at least 6 alternative properties available for purchase, some of which require zoning change, others with the proper R4 classification assigned, and all with the appropriate infrastructure available, so the applicant wouldn't have to build in any rural parts of Oldham County, as she states. The issue is not what sort of structure is best suited for the land, but how best to generate the appropriate revenue versus the purchase price. Provided is a document from the MLS, Multiple Listing Service, searching back to May 1st of 2000, seeking all land, I'm sorry, I'm jumped ahead I'm sorry. Let me back up. The property in question has been listed for $220,000 by owner McMahon Esposito Developers, after purchasing for $105,000 in May of 2000. This property, as we know, is roughly 2.13 acres, providing for a valuation of just over $103,286 per acre. In comparison, the Oldham County PVA has a tax assessed value of $120,000 on all of 2.13 acres. This property has been marketed specifically to a developer from a developer, with the description stating in part, could hold up to 10 units or 3 single-family lots. This property is best suited for single-family residences. In a planning and zoning meeting held on February 28, 2017, the applicant and their counsel stated twice under oath, in video, B at times 7 minute and 1 hour and 5 minute and 45 seconds, the property in question had been listed on the market for 10 years. Provided is a document from the MLS searching back to May 1st of 2000, seeking all land properties with the name like Sadler's. As you can see, the property has only been listed for 366 days, both days on market and cumulative days on market. This statement, prompted by the applicants and their counsel under oath, is misleading at best. And as we saw from Commissioner McWilliams in video B, at times 1 hour, 41 minute, and 15 seconds, and 1 hour and 43 minutes, had directly skewed his decision, stating specifically, in part, what that says to me is that nobody wants it in its current zoning, or it would have already been developed, and ultimately attempting a motion in part on these grounds. Provided in your packet is a prior business arrangement, which was never disclosed and very well could be perceived as an ethical conflict. Citing the Secretary of State's website and a relationship between developer Tim Menard, who is a partner in the map amendment, and Commissioner Kevin Mesker, this is a business involving Oldham County Lumber and Hardware, where Mr. Menard and Mr. Mesker have seemingly equal stakes in the company. One is president and the other is treasurer. The company has articles of organization dating back to 2000 all the way up to its dissolution in 2010. Neither Mr. Mesker nor Mr. Menard chose to disclose such information, and ultimately we observed Mr. Mesker voting in favor of the proposed map amendment. These conflicts of inaccurate information and prior business relations have likely resulted in 2 favorable votes for this map amendment, which passed on a slim 6-5 margin. I would contend, had Commissioner Mesker abstained due to his prior business relationship and Commissioner McWilliams not been misled by inaccurate information, that the proposed map amendment would not be before you today. I would ask that should this committee deny the proposed map amendment, that this committee also consider enforcing a ban pursuant to KRS 100.213, subsection 2, which states in part, fiscal court may adopt provisions which prohibit for a period of 2 years the reconsideration of a denied map amendment or the consideration of a map amendment identical to a denied map amendment. I wanted to cite one more thing, a couple more things that were brought up in the council's testimony. They keep stating that they can put 10, 11, 12 units on this property. What I'm trying to understand is why you would do that. These homes range in value probably between $200,000 and $600,000. These are not shotgun-style homes, but that's what they're leading you to believe, that they can put this amount of homes on there. And they very well may be able to do that, but it's not in keeping with the character of the area and the neighborhoods. Simple as that. I didn't hear anything from the attorneys, the applicant's attorneys, citing why this property zoning is inappropriate. This zoning is appropriate. It allows for what's currently there. High-end, single-family homes. This property, even as I've shown you on the listing from Mr. Esposito and McMahon, states 3 single-family homes. This is not something we want to squeeze into quarter-acre lots. I'd like to provide the magistrates with a couple of townhomes, since it's been referenced, that were in Cedar Point, that are in Cedar Point. Of course, it didn't come up on the market analysis with their analysis because these properties had sold back in 2014. Because there were no properties that had recently sold in the last 6 months. But I think it's imperative to show what the townhouse market brings in this area. And so these 2 properties sold in late 2014, and I will submit this as evidence, one with the sale price of $115 per square foot, and the other one for just under $4 a square foot. Now, I understand market conditions and property location are taken into account, but these were not sold for $167 a square foot townhomes. So the market analysis that they were giving you are geared specifically towards single-family homes. I'm showing you the relation to the townhomes. I'll leave you with just one more thing. This map amendment affects a large sum of people in the community, in which a vast number of them oppose. I would ask that you adhere to the will of the people and lack of evidence in conjunction with the Oldham County Comprehensive Plan and deny the proposal before you today. Thank you for your time.
All right. Mr. Merrill, the next section of the hearing is to allow you to question the applicant. Are you in favor? Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak in opposition to this? Let me ask you to state your name and your address.
Yes, sir. I'm Catherine Miller, and I live at 1609 Kamer Drive, right there on the edge of the proposed rezoning and development. I think I represent a lot of the residents in my area. And what I'm here today to ask of you guys is, I'm not an expert of all of this. I'm in the medical field. You know, I manage patients. But I do know what it looks like in general. When you look at this particular piece of land, when you're thinking about your vote today, and what the evidence has been presented to you about demographic changes and so forth, with regard to this particular piece of land use, that's what I'm asking for you to deeply consider, because it does affect so many of us in that area. This area sits with Heather Hill, Kamer Place, Morgan Place, Sadler Mill houses. It sits right on the edge. You know, the applicant, I think it's a wonderful idea to provide additional housing for the aging population or whoever would want to have a patio home. But I do feel like there's other areas, even in Buckner, that would accommodate that in a more appropriate way. So, generally speaking, our residents are very concerned about the character of the neighborhood and being consistent with what's there. You know, I've been there almost 20 years. I built my house there. I've raised my family there. I'm one of the original residents in Kamer. You know, it's been a wonderful community, and I appreciate all that you guys do for our community. I'm just asking that you take a look at this specific piece of land and how they want to use it. Is if you look at the Oldham County Comprehensive Plan, their proposal is not in line with that. The Oldham County Comprehensive Plan and the map, the land use map that Brooke shared in previous meetings, shows that that was to be continued as R2A on the zoning. And so if we're looking at the law and the comprehensive plan, I really feel strongly that it would be in the best interest of keeping in the character of this area to keep it in R2A. In looking at zoning, again, I'm not an expert, but in looking at the zoning laws and things online, R2A, it mentioned maximum lot coverage of 30% and R4 maximum lot coverage of 50%. It seems much more dense than that when there's actually, I think, about 20 feet to the next yard on Sadler's Mill Road in comparison to this development. Like I said, I think she's doing a great job in offering these types of homes for people in this area. You know, to speculate or to try to extrapolate those demographics and those findings that were presented to this specific piece of land, I think it's very far-reaching to do that. And so I won't take up your time, but that's my concern and many of our concerns. We're just people who work hard, and that's our homes, that's our main investment. And we're deeply concerned about this. And that's all I have. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Is there anyone else who would like?
Excuse me, Judge. What was her name again? I didn't catch it.
My name's Catherine Miller.
Catherine Miller.
I live at 1609 Kamer Drive, there in LaGrange, and right in one of the neighborhoods that borders this. One other thing to mention, on the engineer, when he speaks about the drainage, I don't know the specifics, but Kamer Place does have issues with drainage. And as he drew those lines, this is me looking at it today, so this is news to me, it appears to go toward Kamer Place. I don't know if that would affect us or not. I could only speculate. What we do have issues with drainage in Kamer right now. So anyway, thank you guys very, very much for your time today.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Judge, magistrates, thank you for your time. My name is Danny Cox. I live at 4701 Sadler Mill Road. I oppose this. There's a lot of traffic on that road now. Well, let me back up a minute. I've lived in Oldham County about all my life. Graduated in 1970. I moved back out here in 85, and I've been here since in this area. And that's been 32 years. I love it. Oldham County's great. And, but this traffic is gonna create 40 more cars. It's just I can't get out of my driveway now. I'd like to see this development go away and go somewhere else. There's other places it could go. We need to have speed bumps. That's not 50 mile an hour in front of my house. It's supposed to be 25, I would think, or 30. I'd like to see some big speed bumps put in. I really would. It needs it. I know a few people that live back there, and a lot of them actually, and it needs to be done. Something needs to be done before somebody gets killed. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to this application? Seeing no one, I'll close that portion of the public hearing. Now, Mr. Merrill, I guess, and others, you would have an opportunity to question the applicant on anything they've said. Do you have any questions you'd like to pose?
I'll kind of make it real short here. I guess my only question is, and without citing a population that's growing and aging, because that aging population also dies off too, why is it better to pick up this property and create 10 condos on it, townhomes, instead of 3 or 4 single-family homes that would be in keeping with the neighborhood? And that's all I really have.
All right, Mr. Baxter, would you like to, you can, I guess it's a question. You can present any rebuttal evidence or answer the question if you choose.
Well, I'll answer the question first, Your Honor. First of all, he keeps saying 3 high-end homes, but this is R2A. 7,500 square foot lots are allowable in R2A. And the other component of this is, sewers are available to this property. But to get the sewer line to work properly, you're going to have to install a pump. And the pump is going to be expensive. And it's not going to be an opportunity for somebody to put in one house and pay $40,000, $50,000 for a sewer pump. They're going to have to put in enough houses that they're going to be able to economically make that work, which means that whoever is going to buy this piece of property is going to put in the maximum number of houses that they can on this site. And it's not going to be 2 or 3 high-end houses. It's going to be, as our engineer indicated, 8 to 10 units, because that's the way they're going to be able to make their money. The other thing that continues to come up is we keep hearing about all of these people that have these issues, but as I understand it, from asking staff, when people are sent a notice about this hearing, they are told that 7 days in advance that they can submit their written complaint. But I understand that there's not 168 letters that were submitted. Were there any letters submitted? One?
There were no letters submitted for fiscal court. There were for planning commission, but not since the new notice has gone out.
Do you recall how many were for the planning commission?
2.
So I guess, you know, I hear that, and I understand that it's easy to come in front of you all and to say that all of these people oppose this. I know because I live there. But those people have an opportunity to send letters to you all. They have an opportunity to send letters to the Planning Commission, and there was 2. Not 168, not 213, there was 2. So, you know, it frustrates me a little bit because it makes it very hard for me to come in front of you and say that, you know, to rebut that when it's somebody's statement, like Scott Moore, who has a complaint about this in this petition, but he doesn't show up here to testify. So I can't ask him. I can't talk to him about his complaint. He named 3 or 4 people in here that had supposedly complaints in this petition, but none of them showed up here so that I can ask them about it. And then the other thing that keeps coming up is this traffic issue. And every time there is a development plan submitted, somebody complains about traffic. I know because I've been on the other side of these things complaining about traffic. But the reality of it is because there were so many complaints about traffic with every single development, that you all enacted an ordinance that addressed threshold levels of when traffic had to be analyzed and when something had to be done about that. And this particular project did not meet the threshold to require that to be an issue. I'm sorry that people speed on Sadler's Mill Road. But I don't understand how the owner of this property or my client have any control over that. That's not something that we can do anything about. I mean, that's really more in your all's purview. If that's an issue, then maybe you do need to put speed bumps out there. Maybe you need to ask the county police to monitor this road more stringently. But I mean, again, we didn't have to do anything about traffic. We met the ordinance as it relates to our application for that development plan, and we did what we were supposed to do, and we keep hearing these same complaints, and there's not really any way for me to address those complaints. So the other thing is so Tim Menard was in business with somebody on the Planning Commission 7 years ago. I don't know that I understand how that rises to the level of a conflict. Mr. Mesker is the one who would have an opportunity to raise that if he had a concern about sitting on that, and he obviously didn't think that there was an issue with it when he sat there. It would be hard for many people who live in this county to appear in front of the Planning Commission or the Board of Adjustments or this body and not to have some relationship with one of you all or one of those people. That's just the reality. You know, I mean, 60,000 people are a lot, but it's still 60,000 people is not really in this regard. Oldham County is pretty small in that regard. I don't have any questions for them.
I'll give you a chance to speak again.
Okay. I don't have anything else either, but thank you, Judge.
I think what we'll do next now is give each one of the magistrates who choose to an opportunity to question or either of the applicant or the opponent. 30 minutes. These are questions, okay? Magistrate Logston.
Yes, Mr. Merle, I'm concerned about these names here. Where did these names come from, and did you just send out a petition and ask somebody to sign it, or how did these names come about?
Give me just a moment. Respectfully, Mr. Judge Vogel, I thought that last section was just a kind of a question back and forth. I didn't know that was a rebuttal.
It's not. You'll have a chance to make
Okay.
a final statement here.
can I see the packet that I gave you, just out of curiosity? It's the right one. Okay. What I'm looking for your interest, is the actual petition itself. What it was, prior to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, it was advertised on my property, which actually sits on Sadler's Mill Road, a 4x8 sign stating the proposed development that's being, the use that's being proposed, and then a site where you could find the petition. And basically, it outlined everything that was there that was to be gone over, or that the applicant was seeking, and then you could choose to sign it in opposition. What I had given you there was specifically the addresses in addition to the names.
So these are not people that oppose it then?
No, those are people that are opposing it. Because the way that it was ipetitions.com, the way it's set up is that you just sign the petition. It didn't have a way where you could put your address in it. And so in the interest of validity, and I know this was part of the argument that council made last meeting, that he couldn't substantiate the names that were on that list, I personally cross-referenced every name on that list. It was 234, and so we've dwindled it down to 168.
But it's not a website where you just click on and it captures your name, right? This was actually people that said they are opposed to this development.
Yes, you have to actually type your name in and put your email address in it to sign the petition. Yes, sir.
It said, I'm opposed to this development.
The statement in and of itself said no, say no was the headline, and then there was a body of article that led you to believe that it was in opposition. So say no, and then the opposition article in and of itself.
I'm confused when you said led me to believe. What's that?
Well, so the headline of the petition was say no. And then in that petition, you make your argument as to why it's not a good idea. And so I made the argument in the petition, and those that saw the petition could make that decision for themselves, choose to sign it if they did want to, and then of course they had to put their email address on it as well. So what I'm looking for is that petition. That's what I'm looking, because what I had given you was the cross-reference named with the addresses in the interest of validity. And I did send all the magistrates an email with a link to the petition in the email. And my guess is, as I flip through here in all my paperwork, I may not have that, the actual petition with me.
Hey, sir, I mean, I don't know. There was this question I had.
Yes.
Doesn't matter. And
I
didn't
seem to
open up
have
your
left it.
email because I didn't want to not be able to vote on the issue if I opened it up. So I did not open up any emails regarding this.
The email was strictly informative. That's all it was. That's all that was. Just like the packet that you received from Planning and Zoning today. Okay. Is that it?
As you die? Okay, you don't, all right. Does anyone else have a question here for the Magistrate Eldridge?
I guess we'll start with Jim. As our current engineer, Mr. Harris, has he reviewed this plan? Or was this done prior to his employment? There's Mr. Harris, if you want to step forward. Bill's shirt, I didn't see you.
He's hiding. Scott Harris, 100 West Jefferson Street, LaGrange.
Did you have the opportunity to review this plan, or was this before your tenure?
Yes, no, this came before my first technical review committee meeting.
Okay.
The items 4 through 7, I believe it was, the conditions were put on there by me.
Okay. And you're okay with this drainage on this property?
We've had several discussions since the initial viewing. I believe it is possible.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Baxter?
Yes, sir.
Will there be any golf cart access from here over to the country club?
That would assume that is allowed under your county ordinance. So the answer would be Yes, assuming that it is allowed under your county ordinance and they can get there, but I don't know that they've had any discussions with the golf course about doing that.
No opening in the fence across the way is what I'm getting at.
They have not discussed that. No, sir. I apologize. No, I misunderstood your question.
Okay, could you lead us into understanding the difference in what Mr. McWilliams was believing and what has been presented? Was this an error on Mr. Merrill's part, or how did it work out?
I can tell you that come on up here. So, in fairness, I want you to understand that this is my client, and Mr. Clubb, who made the mistake of showing up here today, did me the favor of presenting this case at the Planning Commission. So what I am aware of is what was said, because I've reviewed the tape, but I don't want to speak for what the testimony was regarding the longevity of sale of this property, because I'm not the one that said it.
Okay.
Okay? Did you discuss that at the Planning Commission?
Refresh what the question is in regard to.
The question is regard to how long, and if I misstate your question, please.
Ms. Vanderbark, the question is, it was presented by Mr. Merrill, and he said that Mr. McWilliams had made the statement that since it's been on the market for 10 years, evidently it was never going to sell under its current zoning. Mr. Merrill says that it has not been on the market 10 years. I'm just curious as to where the confusion is.
I believe the confusion is because nobody really knew for sure how long it had been on the market, but we do know that McMahon Esposito had purchased it in the year of 2000. So obviously they've had it for 17 years. There was speculation on how long it had been on the market. There was even some of the commissioners chimed in. It was one of those moments where I heard several people speak, and I believe at all times it was always, we believe it was on the market for 10 years. I don't know, and I'd have to review the tape, but, and I think Mr. Esposito may be here. Yes, Mr. Esposito is here. He is the current owner.
I don't know if I can see anything.
He's the current owner.
You can approach the podium and we'll swear you in, and then you can speak.
Good afternoon, Judge. Good afternoon.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the entire truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address.
Gregory Esposito. My address is 9512 Trescott Court, Prospect. To answer your question, Kevin, there was a contract on the property back 7 years ago, and it fell out because of the lack of the sewers. The sewers were in a ray back then, so it didn't go forth. But that's when it was on the market. And that contract was kind of in limbo and stayed there until finally it's evolved into this contract here. Was it actively on the market? No. We had it. When we bought the property, Marjorie Morgan wanted us to buy the son's parcels also as part of it. So we didn't have any intent or use for that, but we did buy it. And it sat there for quite a period of time. But when we were developing, we said it would be a good idea to get sewer easement to that property, since it was R2A. And whether it was developed as single-family residential, and it wasn't 3 lots, I think we looked at 6 or 7 lots on the property, dissecting it, but we hadn't made any decision to do anything until we were approached to sell it for patio home use, and it made sense in that part. And I've got personal experience with the patio homes, and there is definitely a demand in Oldham County for that type of development, that type of use. So,
All right, thank you.
if there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Esposito.
Last one I would have, I guess, would be for Brooke, Ms. Veman. While we've heard Mr. Merrill talk about that this would be properly for 3 nice, large homes, in reality, with it being zoned R2A, if we revoke today, they can still come in and build these quote-unquote shotgun homes of that magnitude, correct?
They would most likely have to do a development plan, a preliminary plan to take to planning commission, as we only allow a division of 3 lots every 5 years. So if they were going to divide it into multiple, they would have to take that as a preliminary subdivision plan to the planning commission. But as long as it meets all of our standards, it's basically plan certain. So they would have to approve it unless it doesn't meet a setback or it needs a waiver or something.
Thank you very much. That's all I had, Judge.
Measure die.
I did have a question. I thought you were going with the other half first. Mr. Harris, would you mind stepping back up here for a moment? Want to clarify something that you said. You said on the drainage, you said you believe it will work. Was that the word you used?
I believe it can work.
It can work, okay. And Mr. Esposito brought up the sewers. Can you enlighten us on what the sewer issue is over there? I mean, I'm sure these other subdivisions, Kamer and Morgan, I think that's the 2 other subdivisions nearby. What is the sewer situation there? And
Well-
Mr. Baxter brought up a lift station.
Well, keep in mind that the technical review committee is simply a layout. The planning commission is not much more. Issues that I bring up at a technical review committee are often initially addressed before the planning commission. But there still has been no plans or any design done, at least that I've been privy to.
Okay.
What they are proposing is running by gravity to a small lift station and then running a 2-inch force main up to connect to an existing PVC pipe that then runs into the sewer. At the TRC, I was told it was a gravity flow situation. At the planning commission, I was told it was another force main. Today, I've been told it's gravity. I don't know what they're running it into. I did point out that you're not going to run a 2-inch force main into a 2-inch force main. That part's not going to happen. Because if they surcharge at the same time, then we have sewer all over the ground out of the lift station. That's in violation of MS4.
Where is it?
So how they can solve it is a lot of ways. Size of wet well, size of pipe, run it a little farther. There's a lot of methods that can happen. None of them have been presented.
So like the drainage, you believe it could work, given the right set of design?
Sure.
Okay, all right, thank you. Next question, I guess would be for Mr. Baxter or his client, either one can step up. Ms., hope I say this right. Vanderbark?
He really wants to talk to you. He's
Okay,
trying to be polite, but he couldn't remember your name.
I've got a
so
simple last name, it's a little more confusing.
Vandenbark, yes, thank you.
You had several, your presentation on the homes, where the square footage and the pricing and all that was, we were very well versed. But you did say a couple things. You said the basements are going to be finished out to where they're going to have plumbing in the basement, run to the basement. They were plumbed in or roughed in?
Roughed in plumbing, yes.
Okay, and so were you speaking at that point about living quarters in the basement?
Well, that obviously depends on the type of windows and so forth. It's going to depend on the contract. If it is, it won't necessarily be living because there will not be an external door, at least as of right now. That could change depending on the contract of the house. If they,
So you would be prepared to put a necessary egress?
oh
that
yes,
would be
definitely,
required?
right, before it would ever be finished out as living space
Okay.
or sleeping space.
All right, and you mentioned that the driveway was going to be maintained by I guess that's the Patio Homeowners Association. Are they also going to be in charge of maintaining the property itself?
Yes,
It's going to be resident controlled?
yes,
And they're going to take care of all the landscaping, the roof, the brick, all the exterior stuff as
Yes,
would be
sir.
normally the case. Have you, what's going to be the monthly fee on that?
we believe at this point it'll be $140 a month.
And what else would that include? Would it include like most patio homes, there's like one water meter, one gas meter, are they all going to own their own
They will
individual?
all have their own utilities.
Okay. And you said 100 and how much again?
140.
And how did you determine that? Through a reserve study?
Determine on a cost analysis what it would cost to maintain the property, insurance cost. We also made comparisons with other similar properties and talked with their homeowner and have a
or I have at least one copy of a homeowner's document, a patio home document, and what they cover, and their fees are actually right in line with ours.
So you didn't have a professional reserve study done, because usually these patio homes have to have a reserve setback?
We have not done a professional study at this point. This was basically a study amongst ourselves.
Okay, and the last question in the same vein, what type of reserve are you as the developer owner is going to leave for the patio home association when you exit your responsibility as the owner?
We have not determined that reserve, at least from my standpoint at this point. No, we have not determined that, and I think, I'm not sure what phase we will do that. Probably at least after five properties are under ownership, we can make a better assessment of that reserve.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Magistrate Leslie?
Yes, just a couple things, and that's for those who spoke in opposition for us to vote on this one way or another. But we cannot accept your emails in reference to any zoning issue at all. It doesn't make any difference if it's for the person for it or the people against it. And also information that you had so many people who signed a petition against it. We have to see the petition, and the petition has to be very specific, and without that information, then we can't make any judgment as using that as a fact, just so you know.
Magistrate Greenwell?
Thank you, Judge. I would just like to reinforce what Magistrate Leslie said. I see those emails, and whenever I get a feel for what they're about, I immediately delete them, because I know we had one here that said that he sent an email in favor and one that they said sent an email in opposition, and it doesn't matter. I delete them because we're not allowed to hear arguments for or against anywhere except right here in this courtroom. So you didn't know that, no harm, no foul, but we have to get rid of those. And we can't talk to you on the street either about this without listening to the other side at the same time. That's just the way it works. As to the issue of Mr. Menard and Mr. Mesker and their relationship and what they used to do and everything, I think that's a moot point, given how long ago it was. So I don't have any problem with Mr. Mesker's ruling on the Planning Commission.
Magistrate Hounds?
Mr. Baxter, maybe for you or the client, I guess with where this entrance is going to be, and they talked about the blind curve and the hill. There's no lighting or anything that you're proposing at that entrance? No downlighting or anything at this time?
Bill, can you come up here? That's going to be more of a question, I think, for our engineer about, did you hear the question?
I think I did. No, we didn't plan on any other than down lighting to keep from interfering with anybody, to be an obstruction or objectionable, particularly for the neighbors behind.
I'm more talking about the entrance to help the people that are coming down because coming down the hill.
We see which blind curve you're talking about.
Well, I'm not coming curve, the hill he kept referring to, the hill.
Okay.
No, we don't have anything in particular at this point.
That's something you want to propose as a binding element?
I was going to ask the engineer the question, ask Scott to comment on that. I don't know that, having not been there in the nighttime, I can't. The line of sight is what I'm talking about.
From the pictures, it appears for a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit to be adequate line of sight.
Okay.
But you have to be going the speed limit.
Understand.
Yes. Yes.
That's all we can ask for.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Magistrate Logston?
Yes, Mr. Baxter and Ms. Vandenberg, could y'all come forward? Because I want to make something, Magistrate Dye said something, I want you to clarify it because I don't want you to get in trouble later on. But I think he asked you if there was going to be any living quarters downstairs, and you said no, or however it is. You're not going to, it looks like the elevation, you're not going to be able to have windows access. So you can finish these basements out. You just can't put bedrooms down there to finish it out. So,
Correct. I think I corrected myself.
well,
and said
I
there's
just want to
no
make sure
sleeping
so that
quarters.
it doesn't come back to bite you one day.
It was an issue that was raised, Magistrate, at the Planning Commission as well. And I believe even Mr. Urban commented that that would be out of code and they wouldn't get a building permit to do. So they understood that at the result of the planning commission meeting, if there was any misunderstanding about it before that.
To make sure
Yes, sir.
so that you wouldn't get trapped in it.
And just a comment on that, of the ones that may not know Tim Menard Construction, he is my partner in this. He's been building homes of a very high-quality nature for more than 30 years, approximately. He's very familiar with building code and keeps up with on changes, so I don't think that, I do know for a fact we will not have any issues where we will not be doing things with code. And my husband is a plumbing contractor as well, so we also know very much what we need to do from a plumbing standpoint regarding everything on that property. So we feel confident we've got all the right sources.
All right, any other magistrates? I'd like to ask a couple questions, and Mr. Berry, I'd like to ask you.
Yes, sir.
We've got a Barry Baxter and the Bill Berry, so you
People
both,
call
two
me
Berries
Mr.
can both come forward here, that's fine.
I'm sorry, Judge. People do that to me all the time.
It's
so
no problem, as long as, that property drains, would you say northwest? Thinking
More
about
west,
it,
I
or
think.
West or northwest,
West.
something
Drains
like
towards
that,
the
or
west.
It definitely has a, if you face it, a downward left slope to it.
Gotcha.
How big is the detention basin that you plan to put in?
Well, I've got it drawn right there, if you can see the contours.
I can't see the
Can you make it zoom it in?
Well, probably, but I can't see on the bottom of the screen here how to.
Oh.
I mean, I can't make it out from there, that's why I'm asking you how big.
Well,
That would help a whole lot.
zoom in if you need to see.
go left there.
Yep.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, but I can't really remember exactly how big this thing is. Can you see the where it says the 805 on one? I think it's, well, I can't even read that. 801 on one end, 801 on the other. That's the length of the bottom. And it's about, I don't know, 50, 60 feet long.
Well, my question here has to do with, we have many drainage problems across this county. Many of the drainage problems are a result of previously approved subdivisions still not having adequate drainage. And
Well-
this property, if you put all this new hardscape on this property, appears to me that a lot of water is going to be flowing in some direction. I believe you described 3 different paths to get to, behind, down the front, and was it just 2? I mean, somebody drew something there. And then, where does it go when it gets in? There's a street or a road or something, isn't there, on the left-hand side of that property that
There is a,
back to
I guess we
something?
call it a creek going down underneath the driveway at Camer Place.
Right, so I mean, that's what I'm just saying. How
Well,
much
okay.
water do you anticipate flowing in there? The 1-year storm, 5-year storm, 100-year storm, how is that calculated?
Well, here's the thing. I ran my analysis several months ago to get this to work. Now, Scott has come on board, and we haven't had a chance to talk about it, but as far as I know, I've got a good analysis on this. You have drainage area from up above on Golf View Court. Half of the houses, or half of each house, drains down towards this property. So when it's all said and done, our property is not that much difference as far as the overall drainage is not going to change, the overall drainage area. We are putting some areas in here that are gonna be somewhat, it's just not gonna increase the drainage flow that much, even though we do have some blacktop and some rooftops.
Mr. Berry, can I ask you a question?
Please do.
My understanding is the detention basin has to be sized such that you do not increase the amount of runoff from this property. In other words, whatever rate it's flowing off of now, you have to size the detention basin so that we do not increase the amount of runoff or the way that it runs off this property. Is that am I correct in that?
That's correct, and I think I've overdone it based on what my calculations show.
And is that something that you have to have approved by the county engineer when you do construction plans?
Most definitely, yes. But we haven't had a chance to sit down because we weren't in a position that this project is viable. So, Mr. Harris has been busy on other items.
So, the amount of water flowing down is not supposed to be any more than is coming off the property right now.
The amount of water leaving the property should not be as much as it is now.
Okay, that amount leaving the property is whatever fills up the detention basin and gets to the top of the detention basin and flows out another pipe
Right, exactly.
into the next drainage.
At a
thing.
slower rate.
Okay. But we don't know how much is flowing there now. Do we have, we don't have any detention basin there now, do we?
No. Well, I calculate the flow based on common standards for 2, 10, and 100-year storms.
Right.
And then we offset it with the detention basin to cover that amount.
Right, but if it's maybe this is a ridiculous question, but if no more flow is going to come off the property than what's accumulating right now, I guess we do admit the hardscape is going to create some need for retention that's not there now.
Right, I agree.
Okay. And this is probably a question for somebody else, but are the persons who are agreeing to stepped up, say they want to buy property there, are they aware of the fact that if that detention basin fails, those 10 people are going to have to pay to fix it? It's not going to be the county. We don't fix detention basins anymore on the new residential
Oh, you mean the detention basin itself?
Anything fails there, or there's flooding in the Kamer Place, or something goes wrong, those 10 people are going to have to get the price to fix it. I mean, that's part of what goes with this now.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
That's what the HOA is going to have to be responsible for. So I just want to know that because we have many people out here now who say, well, the county approved this project in the past and something's not working right about it now, but you approved it. So we're being asked to approve something today that the people who take this and go forward with are going to be responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of all aspects of that development, including stormwater.
Well, I'm sure the homeowners association is going to have it written in that they will be responsible for maintaining this whole property, including the detention basin.
And the effects of it if it doesn't work.
Okay.
And Judge, with all due respect, that's the case in every residential development that is approved in the county going forward. So if there's a subdivision that has a detention basin in it, and that detention basin fails, I assume your statements that the county's not going to fix it are true for that as well, even though there might be 40 houses as opposed to 10 units.
Right, but we don't have too many, let's say, participants in the responsibility here with a limited number.
And we don't think that the amount of runoff is going to be, with due respect to you, I mean, we don't think that we're building, that Noah's coming here and we need to build an ark of a detention basin, so.
I understand. I'm just trying to shine a light in all the corners.
We understand.
And the other question I want to ask about that is this: the detention basin will be how far off Sadler Mill Road?
Can you tell by looking at that?
How far off Sadler's Mill Road? Let's see, there's 30 feet. 30 feet. Which portion of the detention basin? Like, it's going to be roughly, the beginning of it would be roughly, say, 20 feet. But that's gonna be the slope going down into the detention basin would be more like 50 feet.
And so the other question is it from the right-of-way or from the edge of the pavement?
This is the center of the road, so it's gonna be from, here's the edge of the pavement, so it'd be right there, it'd be 30 feet.
30 feet?
Yeah.
Okay, well, just, in a bad situation, wondered if a car could go off the road and drive into it, or something like that happen, or, I mean, any kid can get into a detention basin, I guess, but will it be fenced or restricted in any way?
I'm assuming we'll have some fence around it. Can I address the sanitary sewer line at this point?
Sure.
To try to, okay. There is a gravity sewer up on Golf View Court, which is directly north of this project, subdivision. There's a gravity sewer line. When the developers did Morgan Place, they laid a 2-inch line down to this property. What we plan on doing is hooking our 2-inch force main up into the same 2-inch PVC line. And then we'll pump it up into the gravity sewer. It shouldn't be any problem there because we almost have zero flow at that point because it's at the very end and top of the hill there on that cul-de-sac. Is that satisfied?
So has Oldham County Sewer District approved that design?
They will. I mean, as far as I know, they didn't have a problem with it. That's what I meant to say.
I saw one head shaking yes, and I saw another head say they will.
Obviously, we're not going to go in there without having approval. I hope.
Part of the TRC process, Your Honor, it was reviewed by the Oldham County Sewer District.
One more question, Judge.
Okay. Magistrate Hound.
Are you finished?
Yes, go ahead.
Jim, could you come up for a second? So, help us here with this comprehensive plan we keep going back to time and time again. And obviously, people feel that there's a need for this type of property, this type of home in the area. How does this work with the comprehensive plan? What pushes this to happen, this development to happen?
Tell you what, you want to think about that for a second? Can you hold your question? I'll tell you why. Our 30 minutes has expired here, and really these questions we kind of got off track a little bit, were to be directed to the applicant or the opposition versus the staff. We'll come back and talk to the staff after we have the final statements from each party.
That's a good idea. That'll be more around your decision-making process.
Right. So, all right. So let's, we have our opportunity now for the applicant to make a final statement, rebuttal, whatever. We'll give them, how about 12 minutes, okay? Well, we kind of skipped that. We'll give you a little more than 10, but.
I won't need it, Judge.
I probably won't be needed by either.
Judge, is there an order to who presents first, the opposition or the?
I think the opposition.
Should the opposition go first? All right. Well, right, I was looking at section 5 on here. We kind of amalgamated the rebuttal, but that's okay. Let's let the opposition come up and then the applicant have the final statement.
Well, first, let me start by apologizing. I certainly don't mean to catch anybody off guard here. What I specifically meant to do in sending the packet of information I did in your emails was just to give you a packet of information to think about, much like the packet of information that was provided for you by Planning and Zoning. My email was not to dissuade you in any way, okay? And what I would say in respect to the petition, you should see my office. I mean, there's mounds of paper. I absolutely just forgot to bring it. What I would ask is, I mean, is there a way I can just bring it up for you on the internet, and then you could see it. And if that's not appropriate, then.
It would have needed to have been here today.
Okay, so I'll speak a few things in closing, but also in rebuttal, because there were a few things that were misstated. I do want to clarify one thing with respect to Mr. Clubb. In the Planning and Zoning meeting, there were twice that he had mentioned a 10-year sale, that this property had been on the market for 10 years. The first time he looked over at his applicant and got the nod, he said, in speaking to the council, I believe, and then got the nod, yes, 10 years. But in his closing argument, he definitively stated 10 years. And then we also heard Mr. Berry this afternoon, reiterate that 10-year timeline that the property had been on the market. And of course, we know that that's not the case. And so what had actually happened, would seem to have happened, that it swayed Mr. McWilliams' vote ultimately, that he specifically thought that, well, if this property's been on the market for 10 years, nobody wants it, why do they not want it? Is it from the price? Is it because nobody thinks that it's developable? Who knows? And obviously he got into the R4 classification. Council Berry, he cites that 168 people on the petition, and they had the opportunity to submit letters. Well, I would submit to the council that only 55 property owners were ever notified. That was set forth by KRS law. And I understand that that's the threshold to meet, but if your threshold is 55, don't expect us to produce 168, okay? As far as the relation in terms of how to generate the revenue versus a pump that has to be put in to get waste or water out, well, I would certainly contend that the price of the property is too high. It's $103,000 an acre. It's geared specifically to make that revenue back by placing 10 townhomes on the property. That's it. If you place 6 family homes on that property, you're only going to get $45,000, $50,000 an acre, or I'm sorry, per parcel of land. And I will tell you that my parcel of land is 1.06 acres and has a tax assessed value of $45,000. I would contend that the property is overvalued, and that's why they need to build 10 townhomes. Mr. Berry brings up the business or the relationship to 60,000 people in Oldham County, and well, at some point you've been passing met everybody in Oldham County. Well, you haven't been in business with everybody in Oldham County. I mean, we're talking about a commissioner that was in business with the applicant, or one of the applicants. I'll just reiterate that the comprehensive plan clearly states that this zoning classification of R4 is specifically meant to accommodate higher density residential uses and low intensity non-residential uses. This is in the middle of R1, R2, and R2A residential uses, which are meant to protect from higher density uses. And that right there would tell you that it is not in keeping and non-compatible to the neighborhood. And again, to Mr. Berry's argument that he could put 10 homes on this lot, find me another parcel of land. Even in Morgan Place, you're not putting 10 homes on 2 acres. Those properties are well above quarter acre. You're just not going to do it. And so to make the argument that they could do that, I guess they could, sure. But again, who are we really trying to make mad around here? We're trying to protect our property values. And that's what we're ultimately trying to do. What it seems like is the applicant's trying to take advantage of a golf course view and creating as many townhomes as possible and fitting as many sales in that property as possible as well. With that, I digress. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the opponent's would like to speak at the last couple of minutes here on their side? All right, seeing no one, I'll close that and let's go to the applicant for final type statements. We'll give you 12 minutes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Hopefully I won't need it. I appreciate your all's time today. As you all know, this is a process that requires us to go in front of the Planning Commission and to hash this out with that body and to obtain a recommendation that we come here, which is what my client did in this particular case. That happened on February the 28th. The issue about whether or not 55 property owners were notified, there's two things about that. One is there is no evidence, never been any evidence presented, that that was not in complete compliance with the required notification as it relates to the statutes and ordinances that govern these types of proceedings. That's number one. Number two, Mr. Merrill told you he put a 4x8 sign in his property trumpeting to the world that this was going on. Every person that drove in and out Sadler's Mill Road drove by his 4x8 sign and saw his notice that this is an issue. And yet, despite that, you have 3 people show up here today and 2 letters that got sent and then a handful of people that were at the Planning Commission. Now, what that tells me is that you can say that 168 people oppose it, 213 people oppose it, 5 million people oppose it, but those people did not take the time or the effort to show up here to talk to you all about this particular project. On the other hand, my clients have spent time, energy, putting together a plan that they would ask you to consider approving the recommendation of the Planning Commission and adopting the zone change from R2A to R4. And we go back a little bit, and I asked Brooke to put this up because this is always a confusing statute for me. This may not be a confusing statute for you all to read, but every time I read it, I have to read it a couple times to make sure that I'm clear about what is going on. So there's 2 options here, basically. You've got, is the requested map amendment in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan, or if you all do not find that one or more of the following apply. That means just one of the following 2 things have to apply in order for you all to agree with the recommendation of the Planning Commission. And that always confuses me when I read this, because you start to read it, it runs together a little bit, and people start to believe that all of these things have to be met, and that's just simply not the case. I pointed out in our presentation a number of provisions of the comprehensive plan that we feel like are those objectives that we have complied with and that are supportive of this requested zone change. You also heard testimony about the need of this particular type of housing, not only in Oldham County, but in this particular area of the county. That is information that is important in making a decision about whether or not you're going to adopt that recommendation. You've got a situation where the area in Buckner is changing with the extension of Highway 393. You've got an aging population in the county. I showed you a number of statistics that would indicate that the county has a number of people that are over the age of 60, over the age of 65, and those numbers are growing. And the need for this type of diverse housing is something that is clearly something that we were able to demonstrate today with those statistics and with the testimony that we presented. And also, I think Mr. Trent came up and told you that this is something that he's interested in. We feel like that those things demonstrate at a bare minimum prong B of subparagraph 1 there, which is that there have been major changes of an economic, physical, or social nature within the area, and that they weren't anticipated at the time that this property was zoned R2A. I think it's really important to remind you all that the density that we're talking about, these 10 units on this 2.18 acres, is in fact less than the allowable density in the R2A zoning on the property. And I can do the math, and I can say we could shove 12 units in there. In fairness, I asked the engineer, the man who would know, the man who would be able to design this, Mr. Barry, and Mr. Barry believes he can get anywhere from 8 to 10 houses on this particular site. We're asking for 10 units. We're asking for something that would provide for much less coverage on the site, a lot more open space than it was required for this particular zoning or for the R4 zoning. 10 times the open space is what is being proposed here. We feel like this is an excellent plan. We feel like that what was presented to you all, what was presented to the Planning Commission supports the zone change. And we would ask you to make the necessary findings to adopt the recommendation that was provided to you by the Planning Commission. Thank you all.
All right, thank you. Anyone else from your side like to speak in the final minute or two?
I doubt it.
All right, seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing, and we'll go to the fiscal court now to see if there is a motion to be made.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we approve the zoning change from R2 to R4 for the property on Saddle Mill Road.
And your reason for the member, you
I
have
thought
to,
it just had to make, and then we discussed it afterwards.
well, I think you need to make a motion
Okay,
of
well, I'll
why
make
you
the
feel
motion.
that it's appropriate.
I make it that it's, and I feel like it's appropriate because I think it fits the zoning. I mean, we have spot zonings everywhere in this county right now where people are putting in condo units here and there. I mean, I just think it fits for this district right here. I'm not, you could put 12 houses or 10 houses on there versus 2 buildings. In my opinion, I'd rather see 2 buildings than I would see 10 houses there. I mean, I don't know how far you want me to go with this, Judge. I could talk 10 minutes on it, so, sorry.
Fine. Mr. Carter, are you satisfied with the nature of that motion?
I bet Sheila's not.
I know.
Well, would you say that you are making a recommendation because it, that there have been changes in the area that, because of the changing nature of the area? All right, is that sufficient?
What's your question?
Is that a sufficient motion?
I don't think it is.
Well, then,
Well, the problem is that this body just voted in 2014 and said that this was a proper classification for this area. So you're saying it's changed since 2014?
I'm saying I'm going to approve, whatever we vote on, I'm going to approve this development, so.
Well, actually, it's an ordinance. You're making a motion to approve the ordinance,
I thought I
making
made
a
the
zoning
ordinance.
change
I
from...
thought I did, so
No, you-
apparently it's not good enough for it, so.
You can make a motion to approve the ordinance based on the findings of the Planning Commission as set forth in the minutes
Did
that
say
are
that.
attached to the document that you got.
I did say that.
Okay. Well, if you
I
said
said,
that,
I
that's
said
fine.
that I approved
But
because the
it's not
planning
under
zoning brought.
subsection 1A, 1B, because fiscal court just approved a comprehensive plan that says this is a proper zoning for that area.
You're saying that because of that ordinance, I'm having trouble following what you're saying.
The statute just requires fiscal court in planning and zoning to have a comprehensive plan. They just did a comprehensive plan in 2014 that said this area is appropriate for R2 only. So there would have to be a change for the fiscal court now to say that that section 1B applies. And this is spot zoning too. It's not spot zoning anymore. It can't be arbitrary and capricious when you're zoning just one piece of property as opposed to a whole tract. So it's actually subsection 1A that applies, whether or not the rezoning is appropriate. It has to be, there has to be a showing that there's a compelling need for the rezoning sought, or clearly demonstrate that the existing zoning classification is no longer appropriate. But the Planning Commission made findings, and in those findings, the motion that was made by Dr. Arvin was an appropriate motion, except when well, I won't go into that, but it was an appropriate motion in saying that this is a unique situation. The land is appropriate basically for apartments as opposed to single-family dwellings.
All right, would you,
Let me clarify one other thing while you're asking me questions. The petition that was circulated is a part of the record of planning and zoning, and therefore it's a part of the record at this hearing. And the planning and zoning can consider the petition for whatever weight it wants to give it. You don't have to give it any weight, but you can consider it.
all right, I believe you made a motion that the application be approved based on the recommendation of planning and zoning and the details uncovered in the planning and zoning hearing. Okay. Somebody want to second that? All right. Motion dies for lack of a second.
I'd like to make a motion.
Magistrate Greenwell had his hand up.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
I did not want to second. I just wanted to reemphasize what Dr. Arvin said and the reasons why he said it in the Planning Commission, which we all, this is page 11 of 12. And what it says is, he made this motion to approve this because it complied with certain goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan as follows, and it lists those, goal LU-2 and goal LU-2-4.4. So those are the reasons that you can make it in your motion. But if it's going to die for lack of a second, we don't need to worry about this.
All right, you want to try again?
I've already made the motion. Nobody seconded, so it's dead, right?
All right.
No?
Is that motion okay with you, Mr. Carter?
Sir?
Is his motion okay with you, Mr. Carter?
Say again.
Is his motion okay with you, this last motion?
Yes.
Then I will second that motion.
All right. It's been moved and seconded here that we approve this based on, the motion is that the application be approved based upon the reasons stated by Commissioner Arvin in the planning and zoning approval of the application. Okay, so that would be that it complies with certain goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan, goal LU2, to encourage the preservation and development of a range of housing opportunities, because the applicant has provided expert testimony showing comparable sales and market demand for quality alternative single-family attached housing, or alternatives to that. Certain demographic changes that show the population of age 65 is increasing, and that the applicant has provided testimony indicating demand for smaller square foot housing with no or low maintenance cost. So that would be in the, is that, Magistrate Eldridge, do you second that?
Correct.
Okay. Discussion. I'd like to, Magistrate Eldridge.
I'd like to say Mr. Merrill did a great job today with his presentation. But the reality that hits me is this is R2A. It could be 6 or 7 houses. That would be 6 or 7 driveways, which I think would be worse than the 1 driveway. Just from what study that I did back when I was at Planning and Zoning, seniors tend to have fewer trips a day. If you had 6 houses with children in them of teenage age, I think you're going to produce more traffic on that road with the 6 houses than you would with the 10 like this. So I think, as far as what you've got, the 2A, what it could be, would be more of a detriment than what this R4 is as planned, sir.
Magistrate Greenwell.
Thank you, Judge. I believe that we're trying to do too much on this piece of property. I believe we're trying to put a size 8 foot into a size 7 shoe. And while you might be able to do that, it's going to hurt like heck. And I don't believe it's fitting with the character of the community. So I'm going to vote for it. I would vote against it for those reasons.
Magistrate Tice.
Yeah. I've wrestled with this a bunch. I've viewed planning and zoning, and if that disqualifies me, it shouldn't, because I've been on fact-finding. The threat that it could be a lot worse than what this development is also, it could also be a lot better if you had 3 lots. I have a problem with it not, and I think the Planning Commission was in error, that when you look at the KRS 100.213 and what it has to meet is they failed to demonstrate that. In the motion made by them, where they were talking about the LUs, 2s, 3s, and 4, those are overall, in my interpretation of looking at the book and reading it, those are all in what we want out of our zoning. They don't, in my mind, don't depict the reason to zone it, but once it's zoned, then this is what we're looking to find out of the L1, 2s, and et cetera. KRS makes it simple. You got to have certain reasons to do it. And I don't think it's demonstrated that reason to do it. Not that it couldn't be a good development, not this or that, but you've got to have a reason. And if we do this here, then what happens down the road in somebody else's territory? Do we make that same justification? And I just can't find the reason for it. So.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to comment on? All right. Pardon? Well, this is a real tough issue. In other words, we've had on one hand, we have people bringing forth something that I think we strongly need in our community, and that's senior housing. Don't deny that at all. When I run into builders, I keep asking them, telling them, I'm a candidate myself, for senior housing. Would like to have someplace with less maintenance. So that's a very strong point. We need that here. We also seem to have strong opposition in the neighborhood, or at least we're told there is. I agree, people did not show up. I did not really hear from more than a couple people, and that is true. But I can recognize that, how people may feel. The one thing that bothers me quite a bit about this, to be honest about it, it's a point that I think was dismissed earlier in a way, but the Planning Commission vote was 6-5 in favor of approving the change in zoning. That's, and an ethical consideration was raised in regard to one commissioner. Now, I have strong confidence in that commissioner. Okay, I don't want to cast any negative dispersion in his direction, but when you have a vote that is razor close, and there's not a lot of people, if the vote was, it says 6-5, it was 8-3, and it was with a large majority, that passes totally under the bridge with no question. When it's right there and that one vote swings the difference, I think it's just raises a question in my mind, not that he did anything that he intended to do wrong, but it just has the perception. The perception of something inappropriate is bad. So I don't like that circumstance, and you can see people are divided here. So, but we do need this. I think it'd be a very good development. I have no doubt that it'll come out looking very nice and be a handsome, quality addition. And for the people in the neighborhood, I raised what I thought were the rough issues in regard to the detention pond. We have a lot of problems with the detention ponds and zoning flooding in this county. We just can't have any more. The fiscal court has passed a new post-construction stormwater ordinance. We've drawn a very hard line, tried to communicate it to all the builders that we want everybody to be successful, but we must not have any more circumstances where people come back to the fiscal court and say, hey, you approved something, didn't work, it's your fault. No, it's not. We want everything to work properly. And so, didn't mean to give Mr. Berry a hard time. He's an excellent engineer. And I didn't try to put you on the spot, but that stormwater is something we just cannot have go wrong again anytime here in the future. So, those are my comments, and with that, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Magistrate Dye?
No.
Magistrate Leslie?
No.
Magistrate Tice?
No?
Magistrate Eldridge?
Yes.
Magistrate Hounds?
Yes.
Magistrate Logsdon?
Proud yes.
Magistrate Greenwell?
No.
Judge Vogel?
No. Motion fails 5-3.
May I say something? We have to do this by resolution, so we'll have to have a resolution oh, I'm sorry. I'm ahead of myself. I withdraw that.
Sorry about that, Judge. All right. All right, I think we'll take a 5-minute break here now.
He was.
That is not acceptable.
Still congested and traffic's not great. And where we get the market and the apartments, I think we're gonna.
Didn't say, what's this we? You got a mouse in your pocket?
Better access, roads are wider, traffic lights, things like this.
Well, it's another decision we wanted to put a farmer's market.
Yep. I voted for that, and Kevin Eldridge voted against it, Wayne Tice voted against it, and I still haven't got it.
Oh, I'm fine.
I lost that one, but
They
you
have
lose
something in
it.
front of them that tells them how they have to say the motion. He starts one way, he reiterates it a completely different way. As to him, if it's okay,